8th at 6:37. President Ernest Lowell, Carl Borchert, Joe Marklinger, and Diane Coombs. Barry Rector, our chairman, will be here, I believe, around about 7. And I don't think Mr. McLaughlin is coming. But at the moment, we have 3 regular members, Mr. Marklinger, Mr. Lowell, and myself. We have an agenda, but we're going to depart from the agenda because Barry is sitting on all of these special permits. So we're going to rearrange the agenda and Andrew, go to the A&Rs first?
Madam Chair, I'd like to,
and then
for public comment, if we could entertain just a quick presentation on the elementary school.
Okay, so for the purposes of this agenda, we're going to do public comment first for our presentation from the elementary school, the new elementary school proposal. Then we're going to go to the A&Rs, and then we're going to go to the secondary dwelling, and at that point, Barry should be back for the public hearing. So somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda with those changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we will open the meeting with public comment. And Superintendent Michael Cozart is here, and Diane O'Neill is here.
Thank you for inviting us to bring you up to speed. I'm going to try to take a 1-hour presentation and condense it to 5 minutes. So if I don't do something justice and you have questions and want to follow up, please do so. I would encourage you to do that. What is driving this, and I think there aren't a lot of secrets among planning board and other boards in the community, is student enrollment. And 5 years ago, when I looked at coming to Nantucket, the one thing I said to my wife was, well, it looks like we won't have to build a new school because enrollment had gone down for 4 years from 2006 to 2010. Since that time, we have increased in 5 years by 325 students. In a small district, that is pretty significant. And I've tried to give you some of the demographics there for you to reference. We have an elementary school that was built for 500 students, arguably 550, that now serves 720 children. So we have put together a program to build a new intermediate school that would be a grade 3 through 5. And in addition, a small addition to the middle school, so that we would be able to address the numbers. To put it in a nutshell for you, we have graduating classes of 90 and 95 being replaced by kindergarten and first grade classes of 125 and 135 students. I think you can see that those numbers are going to be rolling through our school district. As part of our building project, the superintendent of the schools offices will be moving out of the high school, and that will happen this summer, and we'll be giving them 3 more classrooms. So we really, I want everybody to understand that this is a space crunch in all of our schools, not just in the elementary school. So our plan is to build a grade 3 through 5 elementary school, and I'll have Diane put this up. This is a site plan. You can see by looking at it, I think you each have a copy, and there are copies for the audience in the back. The new 3 through 5 will be tucked into what is now the parking lot of the existing elementary school. So you're looking at, and I'll let you play Vanna, Diane, and point to the school. We have a good design. We have a great building committee of about 25, 30 residents representing all constituencies in the community, and they have been working for months with architects to develop a plan. The new building will be a 2-level building with the 3rd grade and all of the common classrooms, art, music, PE on the ground floor, and the 4th and 5th grade academic wing on the top floor. In addition, as I said, we'll be building a small 4 to 5 classroom addition to the middle school in the back of the middle school, where most of you might recognize is the existing wood shop in the back of the middle school. The timeline, we expect to go to the April town meeting and ask for the approval of the voters. It's an aggressive timeline, but every year that we wait, the solution becomes more expensive. And so this is just a quick look. Let's look at the ground floor first. Quick look at the new school, and you can see the design in front of you. Pretty much set around what we call a cluster idea, so that all of the classrooms have a common space in the middle with which to share and work. On the top floor, as I said, the 4th and 5th grade clusters. The trick in building a school in this day and age is to build it large enough for some future enrollment numbers, but not build it too large, so that it's you're putting unnecessary space into the district.
Like the police.
So that's the plan in a nutshell. There's so much more that I could cover. I will say that as part of this plan, some of the discussions that we've had that would affect the planning board are traffic and parking. And that's been foremost in the plan as we talk about, how is that going to impact, for example, Surfside Road. So we've had Andrew and Mike Burns, and Linda's been a part of it. So we've had a lot of good people involved, and all the important community stakeholders. We have talked about in the 5, 10, 15, 20-year vision whether the town might want to have a connector road connecting the schools to Sparks Avenue to take some of the pressure off of Surfside. And we're going to continue to have that conversations. We know that the school district does not make that decision alone, but it is a good conversation because we need to be looking for future plans. Questions at this point? I don't want to overdo, Madam Chair.
Yeah, if there are any, sure.
Do the board members have any questions? Just to clarify, this project does not have to come to the planning board for approvals.
That's correct.
It does have to go to the HDC,
Correct.
which I believe is the only board they have to go to in town meeting.
I believe at this point it's fully compliant with zoning, and I think that's it.
So we're simply here as an educational tool. The more the project gets out, because I am on the building committee, the more the project gets out on TV, people have an opportunity to ask questions, the better off before they get to town meeting. We're trying to do a blitz on education on this project before town meeting.
Starting in January, we will be ramping up the community forums and opportunities to go out into the community to talk to large groups, neighborhood groups. The word will be getting out. We're developing a web site for this as well. And so that you will hear a lot more, but this just gives you a cursory look at what we're planning.
Do you have any plans for getting First Way paved?
Well, I don't know if Andrew wants to take that, but we've had that conversation. Again, that wouldn't be a school committee decision solely, because that is a community right-of-way.
And that is being looked at right now. There's a complication with First Way in that the sewer, it's not just a road paving, because the sewer lines that are in First Way are the private spaghetti lines that we refer to, and they're very narrow. or very shallow to the surface of the road. So it really is a full reconstruction of that road. It is an issue that the DPW director is advancing, though, through the capital programming.
Andrew, to elaborate on that, we're also talking about trying to obtain access from Bacchus Lane to First Way. And then the issue of going from First Way to the Stop and Shop that was proposed several years ago, it's already been cleared, is coming up again to siphon that off. So we don't have everybody, they can come into the school, but they shouldn't try to get back out on the Surfside Road. Having a kid in school, it's a nightmare. So they're going to keep trying to go that direction. And there's another option on our plan, which they can point out. It's nobody's best option, but it is on the table. It would run behind the playground out to the paved portion of First Way. So you have a couple of different directions to go from there. It would siphon it off. It would be one way towards First Way, so you wouldn't, again, go back out onto Surfside Road. So there's a lot of things on the table at this point.
Thank you.
Diane, you have a question?
Yeah, I hope in your conversations about the traffic around and stuff, I know the school isn't fully involved in it, but I've been reading in the paper and people's remarks and stuff about a roundabout at the corner, and it seems that a great many people feel that that's not a proper place to have a roundabout, including.
Are you talking about Surfside and Sparks?
Yes.
That corner?
Yeah.
I know that conversation has preceded my tenure here. I think it was probably 6 years ago that came up, and it was decided not to do that. That hasn't come back before the school district at this point, and it's not part of what we're proposing at this time.
That's good. I don't think it gets any better, even after 6 years.
But Andrew, I think you might want to talk about the proposal for the Bartlett Road, Surfside Road intersection, moving the entrance to the elementary school. There's a lot of moving parts that aren't really settled anywhere yet.
Right, and I think it's important for the site planning for the school to not get intertwined in some of those discussions. Those are ongoing. We have received town meeting approval to buy certain property at the corner of Surfside and Bartlett, and we will be proceeding with that. But again, timing may not actually, it's something we can certainly go back to and look at once we have the roadway built. But at this point, I think the design that has been advanced, and I'm a committee member on here, I think they've done an excellent job laying this out. I think really we're in a good place on moving ahead with that current design. So there's lots of roads around there that are going to be involved in ongoing discussions, and in the meantime, they have students to house and lessons to learn, I guess. So.
We have, for the public's edification, we're working on a brochure, informational brochure that'll be all over the place and available, and we're going to have a website.
Yes.
So nobody's trying to do this with smoke and mirrors like some other building we know. But everything's going to be up in front of everybody so they have the full detail, and they'll know why we think that we need this larger school or this particular size of school, because what's going on in the kindergarten and first and second grade are going to be the middle school's problem, and that's woefully underspaced. And then it's going to become a problem with the high school. So the administrative offices would be moving out into this building, so there'd be more classroom space at the high school to take what this is coming through the system. Nobody expects this. I know the question's going to be asked, what happens in 5 or 10 years when it declines? Nobody expects this to be a one and done. Nobody expects this to decline all of a sudden once we build it. All of a sudden we have empty classrooms. That isn't going to happen. Carl?
This looks really good as far as not using the athletic fields, the existing ones and the Bacchus Lane ones. I know there was some controversy brewing about that.
Yep.
So the location of it looks a lot better, right there in the corner of the woods in the parking lot area.
Thank you.
So I think you really made a lot of progress with that.
Yeah. we certainly examined, I think, 6 or 7 different sites, and the Bacchus Lane had 2 possibilities on it, but we quickly moved away from that based on the restrictions, the deed restrictions for that. And we wanted to maintain as much as we could with fields. At some point in the future, though, the district's going to have to be able to look at this and see if you can continue to maintain the campus. Because if we ever have to build a new middle school and put the existing middle high school into all high school, at some point you're going to either use field space. So I think it would behoove the district over the next 10, 15, 20 years to start to look at land acquisition around it, so that we can maintain the campus that is so many people say we want on Nantucket. So thank you very much.
Is there any question from the public at this time? Not seeing anything. Thank you very much for
Thank you
coming.
very
And
much.
when we get this updated and things more solidified, you're welcome to come back and go back on public comment again.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to go, is there any other public comment? Okay. We're going to go to the A&Rs,
Yeah, I can't vote on the Eagle Lane,
which is which one?
the first one.
Oh, the first one, okay. What do we do in that case?
Wait till Barry comes, go back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could do the others starting with
Okay.
7773.
All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 11 A&Rs. Staff has no outstanding issues, Andrew?
There are not.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to endorse 7773,
Yep.
7774, 7775, 7776, 7777, 7778, 79, 80, 81, 82, and 83, all per staff recommendation.
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve 7773 through 7783, leaving 772 on the table until Barry gets here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous, Catherine. Okay, we have one secondary dwelling on 13 West Dover Street. We've been asked to include a condition in the motion that in the event the parking space shown is not pre-existing non-conforming because it doesn't meet the dimensional requirements, they shall have to comply.
I took a look at it. I don't see why they can't have a driveway.
Well, it's
You get
not,
the
it's not
parking.
9 by 20. It's a 6 foot by less than that. Leslie?
The existing parking space is about 6.5 by 20. The proposed parking space does meet the 9 by 20 requirement. And the applicant had asked for the 2 parallel spaces because it is a one-way street. And it seemed like it might create less of an issue with backing out into the one-way street as opposed to just pulling in and pulling back out with the 2 parallel spaces.
So they're asking to leave,
They're asking to leave the existing space and to create an additional parallel parking space.
I went and looked at it. I don't get that.
except for technical reasons, we have to include that.
No, I understand that, but can't we make them do the driveway?
Well, if it's pre-existing non-conforming.
Well, the one space.
Yeah. The second space, I believe, Leslie, is conforming?
It didn't look
The
too.
second space is conforming.
Yeah.
Well, it's shown on the edge of the pave, though, not in on the lot.
There's a little bit of an interface between the right-of-way and the inside of the lot because there's a gap between the pavement and the lot line.
Yeah. It's a very unique
We may actually have a
situation.
prohibition against backing out onto Westover. I'm just going to check that real
Okay.
quick.
Here's a question, Leslie. If they've got two spaces, one of those spaces can be 7 by 17.
Yes.
So why can't they just give us the extra 6 inches? Is that
They-
going to kill them?
Well, they would have to ask for relief from that, and it requires a special permit. I think the idea is that they would just move a portion of the space to where they could widen the whole thing out to 7 feet.
Well, if it turns out that the space is not pre-existing non-conforming, then they have to comply with the 7 by 17, right? Minimum.
Yes.
So just put that in the motion, that if it's not pre-existing non-conforming, then they're going to have to comply. That's what she asked us to put in.
And there is not a prohibition against backing out onto Westover.
Okay. Motion?
Okay. Are you ready to
Yeah.
make a motion to approve for the staff recommendation?
And that condition?
That condition, yes.
Okay, so is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Nat's made a motion to approve per staff recommendation, and provided the space is pre-existing non-conforming, they don't have to comply with the current requirement. If it is not, then they have to comply. Any further discussion on that motion?
In the recommendation, they're going to trim those bushes back? I mean, it's pretty,
You can add that.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're-
There's
they're
not a lot
pretty-
of visibility there.
Yeah, there's not much visibility. I mean, they should do some heavy trimming there.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Catherine? That was unanimous. Where do you want to go now? Previous plans? We didn't really plan on that.
You wanna
We
do
didn't
that?
plan on the previous plans.
Madam Chairman, these are all really straightforward. I think we could go ahead with those.
Do we need to reopen the agenda to go there? We said we'd go back to the special permits before we did anything else.
I think we can just go to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go on to Roman numeral 4, which are previous plans, 7714 Dukes Road Estate subdivision. What are we doing?
We've reviewed the plans and the legal documents, and we recommend endorsement.
Okay.
Somebody want to make that motion?
Yep, I'll make a motion to approve. for
The
staff
endorsement?
recommendation.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. 7726 Mashemmy Lane subdivision.
You know
We-
what that, with that?
Leslie?
We've reviewed them, and we recommend endorsement.
Somebody want to make that motion?
Okay, I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have 2105 Nantucket Properties, 140 and 42 Noberdeer Farm Road.
Madam Chairman, you should have an updated agenda that reflects that this has been continued. The applicant couldn't get over today, and she asked it to be put on the January meeting agenda,
What's the January date?
January 12th.
Okay. Do we need a motion to that effect?
Yes.
Somebody make a motion to put this over?
To move this off the January meeting.
January 12th, 2015.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have 1207 Stop and Shop, 2131 Sparks Avenue.
Madam Chairman, we requested an opinion from town council on this, and they requested some additional time to provide that. So this should also be continued to the January 12th meeting.
That isn't going to unduly slow this project down, right?
No, they have a building permit, and they are moving forward with construction.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to continue?
To continue to January 12th.
2015. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 1611 On Island Center MCD amendment.
Madam Chairman, there's a typo on the agenda. It's not an amendment, but we do need to vote to endorse the plans. I recommend endorsement.
Okay.
Okay, that's the little Cumberland Farms thing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The existing Cumberland Farms on
Right.
Pleasant, or on
Right.
Sparks Ave.
Right. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Endorse.
Endorse the plan.
Okay.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. We have a sketch plan from Larry and Anna Nathanson, 10 Massasoit Bridge Road. Is there anybody here to represent this? Oh, good. I don't have to call you.
Jeff Blackwell for the applicant. The Nathansons purchased this property in 1971 and constructed a home on the easterly end of the property, and at this time are considering subdividing the property. They have children. Their kids are grown, and they want to build a house on Nantucket and continue to live in this area. So the main reason for the discussion plan is to be sure about the road widening and grading that is required by the planning board before we go to natural heritage, and not to depict more work than we have to because of their thresholds that are associated with their reviews. So the distance from the bridge, the Massasoit Bridge, to the westerly property is about 1,800 feet, and then there's about 1,200 feet of frontage along the Nathanson property. The road grades are quite gentle, and the visibility is pretty, is good, even with the brush that is in that area. It's been managed along the road, so the visibility is quite good. It occurs to me to ask you if you want a full 16-foot width as usual for an A&R endorsement, or if you would look for something less than 16 feet uniformly, but have turnouts at the appropriate locations. There's only a couple of gentle curves on the Massasoit Bridge as you approach the property. So, if staff wanted to take a look at that, that would be something we would encourage you to do if it would help you make a decision about uniform width versus a varying width with turnouts. So that's really all I have for you in terms of points that I wanted to bring up, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Jeff, before anybody asks any questions, you want to explain the road wanders in and out of the road layout, especially in front of the lots that you're creating?
Yes.
You are relocating it on to the westerly side in 2 spots, and you're not relocating it where it's wandering in and out of the 4 lots. You want to explain that?
Well, it hasn't been a point of discussion yet with the Nathansons whether they would want to relocate that section in, but if the planning board would like to see that, instead of having an easement across a small portion of, I think it's one of the lots, we can certainly take care of that relocation as well. The 2 main relocation areas are associated with land bank land that's situated closer to the bridge. And there's a total of about 900 feet of sections of roads that we would need to relocate to bring into the layout, the Massasoit Bridge layout.
Does staff have any comments on this? You've been discussing it, Andrew and Leslie, with them.
Light version of the Oak Point Road here.
Right, I think one thing that's important is there is not a lot of future development that will occur on this road.
It dead ends sort of up past them, right?
It's semi-passable, right, to the east as you go past there.
Yeah, the passability sort of goes downhill as you get just past Nathanson's driveway. You're into pinstriping your car at that point.
Jeff, I noticed the lot 50, it's shown as 59-7. Is that a vacant lot as well, next to them?
It is. That was a more recent purchase from Nord Farm Trust some years ago. I'd say about 10 years ago.
And through you, Madam Chair, is that lot buildable as well? Does
Yes.
that meet the LUG 2 standards?
Yes.
Okay. Would all the lots be eligible for second dwellings?
That's not a discussion we've had with Mr. and Mrs. Nathanson, but I would have to, standing here, I would have to say yes, we should assume there'd be second dwellings.
How big are the lots?
80.
2 acres, right?
Excess of 80,000 square feet, yeah.
Linda?
Any board members have any questions?
Well, no, I think I'm out of this discussion because I've got a client a little bit further down the road, so. I don't want to make a recommendation that you know, pave the road and then he pops in, you know what I mean?
Well, there's not going to be any pavement out here.
No, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Do you have any questions over there, that end of the table? Carl? Diane? Questions at this point?
Not yet.
Nat?
No, I just, sharing microphone somehow here. You know, Jeff, I mean, I look at this as like, kind of like a dead-end Squam or a little dead-end Eel Point. You know, we've talked about, we just had that issue at the other end of Eel Point, after 200, down in there somewhere, where the people wanted to do an A&R, similar to this, but the road was on, they had to move it completely. That hasn't been, I don't think that's even finalized yet. But I don't see this as a need to make huge improvements, personally. 14 feet can get 2 cars to pass. You know, you don't have to be 16 to get 2 cars. Turnouts, like we did with Squam, really has worked well. It's been 2 years now since we got an agreement with the association out there to kind of maintain the shoulders, keep the shoulders back so you don't have pinstriping. At the same time, though, making sure that there are turnouts in places where there's no driveway cuts. You know, I've been out here a zillion times over the years, and there's a lot of sand down here deposited over the years, right where you get off the bridge and turn left. It's like a, kind of like the drop-off at Gardner Road. It's just all sand there. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, if you need to bring the road back into the layout, I mean, that's quite an improvement just to be doing that. I mean, do you think that that's necessary, Andrew? Because we didn't do it at Eel Point for other reasons, but they need to do it.
I think on their own property, it could be covered with an easement, and that wouldn't be a problem. I think they do have to do it unless they can get easements from the land bank or from U.S. government. Good luck with that one.
Yeah, I see that.
Right.
But what about utilities? Is it going to affect what's already in the ground? Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, I'm fine with what you're doing without doing any other major improvements other than maybe just kind of cleaning up, making sure there are turnouts, leaving it as existing traveled way, but maybe working on the shoulders like we've been asking people to do.
So where we're going is that we don't want it all cut completely to 16 feet.
Right.
It's basically a single track with
These are
pullouts.
seasonal houses as well, so.
That's okay with you guys, given the area?
Madam Chairman, there is an area where it does narrow down, and Mr.
really
Blackwell referenced that. The last time I was out there, I met with Dr. Nathanson at the property, and we walked it, and it was pretty narrow as it got closer to his existing driveway. So I think the board should decide on some width for that, and I think even maybe 12 feet's okay. There's only a couple of houses past this point.
What if she owns that
It's like
lot?
Low Beach Road.
Is that something you can work out?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
12, as it gets towards his current driveway, it gets really narrow and kind of squirrely. Leslie's suggesting that you try to get to 12 feet and try to get it a little bit more passable.
Yeah.
Nobody's out there without a four-wheel drive anyway. Let's be real. But it does get a little too sketchy as you get closer to his existing driveway. Okay, but everybody's okay with it otherwise? Carl?
So am I under the understanding that you can't go to 16 feet wide because of easements with the government and the land bank?
No.
Okay. So I would offer an opinion of 16 feet from the bridge if you're going to have secondary dwellings, just to throw that out there. I think that would be better for the amount of houses that'll be there.
Have you mapped the endangered species at all out there yet?
No,
Okay. Has there been a study, or?
no, we'll just apply directly. We haven't filed an information request or anything, so I'm not sure what their interests are in that area.
But generally, it's all subject to
Yes.
the mapped area.
Yes.
This is our first.
Okay.
No, I don't need to do that. What do we need to do here? Just vote?
Well, it's a sketch plan, and I think so far we've heard different numbers on the width, or at least 16 down to 12 or something like that. So it would be good to give them some direction, I think.
I'm okay with that. I agree with Leslie on the 12. As you get closer to his driveway, just try to figure out how to regularize that. And you're relocating it in 2 spots now. And I think an easement suffices on the pieces where it floats in and out of the 4 lots. So these are all going to be sold out separately?
Eventually, yeah.
I would assume it's easements in favor of the town,
The inhabitants of
the
the town.
inhabitants of the town of Nantucket.
Yep.
So it can be pass and repass.
I'm just getting to the sequence of what happens on this, because it would be an A&R plan
Yeah.
that we're talking about, and we would in general be doing the work necessary to create the road that would support the endorsement before coming in with the A&R plan. The conditions on A&R plans. So, I mean, we certainly can represent and agree that we will voluntarily grant these the inhabitants. We can work that point out.
Okay.
In any event, I just wanted to make it clear how we're structured.
It's not fatal to the 4 lots. The 4 lots are the 4 lots are the 4 lots. They're square lots. They all have frontage, and they're all fine as far as size, so.
The easement is going to be critical to you making a judgment on width,
Access.
grade, and construction.
Yep.
That's your A&R
Yep.
finding.
Anything else? Anything else down there?
I'm not sure that I'm clear on all the widths and what areas and so forth. So we're going to relocate the road where it's not within the layout. Nat had a width of 14 with turnouts. Carl suggested 16. I just want to be clear.
He suggested 16 up to the, where the red is, where the lots start, where Mrs. Calhoun's house is, basically. I think that's what Carl was saying.
I suggested for access to all the lots.
You want the whole thing 16
Yeah.
feet?
Oh,
You don't think that's wide?
Well,
no, that's too.
I don't think it's that wide. It's just for traffic flow for second dwellings, that's all I'm saying.
I thought I was the one that wanted the wide roads. I mean, 16 feet is wide for a dirt road for this. I mean, this is like Low Beach kind of similar situation that we ran into down there with that 1 second dwelling that caused all the havoc. I mean, I would be in favor of the first part being a little wider, which is what I thought Carl meant, so I stand corrected. And because you've got to do so much work there anyway, and it's, you could make that, where 2 vehicles can pass. 14, in my opinion, is wide enough for out there. And then when you get down, like Leslie's saying, when you get down into the spot where it gets really narrow, try to make it a little wider, like say 12 feet. But keeping the shoulders cut back, to me, is more important with turnouts than just making the road just wider.
Well,
Because we've proven that it works with Squam and
your
some other
point.
places that we've done this, and everybody seems to be happy with it, because it sort of keeps with the way it used to be without it being all grown in, and it gets taken care of by the property owners.
Well, you also have the unknown quotient of MIPA. We have no idea if they're going to let you move the road. We have no idea if they're going to let you widen the road. We have no idea what their impact's going to be. We're simply giving you an advisory opinion at the moment. So when you run in headlong into those guys, you'll be back if something isn't working.
Yeah, the sequence may very well be that, once again, we're getting a pretty good, preliminary take
Read.
of it from the board right now. Not that it's completely agreed upon among all members, but, we're not very far apart. And obviously, before we come in for endorsement, we will have done work, and we will have done at least a draft easement and all sorts of things like that. And obviously, before we do any work, we've absolutely got to deal with natural heritage. So we would have that in place. And when we find out whether there are any impediments that come as a result of natural heritage review, we would, if there are any changes at all to what we're doing, we'd be coming back to you for another preliminary sketch discussion before coming in with a real plan. So, again, this is the first stage in the process.
Well, I think you're hearing that most of us feel that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's just, where is it going to be 16? Where is it going to be 14? Where is it going to be 12? Where the turnout's going to be? And you don't have this engineered. This is a preliminary plan. So,
I would wager that we'll be back to you with a more specific proposal and more specific delineation based upon what we've got from you tonight, plus what we get from natural heritage before we finalize.
And can we add one more voluntary condition to the A&R? Homeowner, a sort of a limited homeowners association for the road maintenance? Not maintenance so much as just access, right?
ensuring that there's access.
Anti-pinstriping homeowners. Okay?
That's approved idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need to take formal action here?
No.
Okay.
Can I just make one suggestion? I do think that the road, if it's the 12 feet, it should go to that eastern edge of 59.7, if that's going to be eventually a buildable lot.
The last lot on the left.
It's in their control, but it's a lot that was purchased separately from the one that we're subdividing, but it's controlled by the same owner. And it would behoove you to run whatever improvements past your last lot all the way to that lot. That's basically the last lot that's really going to have a whole lot of access here. Okay, nothing further? No, we don't.
No, okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our chairman, Augusta Chairman, has arrived, and we have done everything on here but the ZBA cases, and we're going back now to public hearings because we had to wait for you. Oh, we have one other item first, which is we have to go back to an A&R, the first A&R, 772, because Joe had to recuse himself.
All right.
I'm turning it over to you, but if you want to ask for a motion.
Yeah, all right. So there was only one A&R that we need to address at this point, which is number 772. If there's any concerns by the board.
I'll make a motion to endorse that.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed.
Okay. Now we're back to the
Let
special permits.
record reflect that Mr. Markinger is abstaining from this. Okay. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your indulgence tonight. All right, that's going to bring us into public hearings. Thank you, Linda, for taking care of everything. I really do appreciate it. First thing before us is 1913 Brian Ryder at 5.5 Mary Ann Drive, and I know Leslie or Andrew, you had something for us before we...
Mr. Chairman, I researched the building department files and determined the parking spaces that were required at the time that building permits and certificate of occupancies were issued, and have a suggestion for the applicant, which will basically be to close off that parking area across the front of the property. Mm-hmm. And that will remove their surplus parking, but there's really no way for the planning board to permit that because it's completely out in the right-of-way.
Okay.
I could not meet with the applicant before tonight, so I'd like for you to keep this open, but I believe that will be the solution that we'll be heading towards.
All right, was there anyone here representing the applicant? I'm just curious. If not, Linda, go ahead.
Do we need an extension on this again, or do we have one till next year?
We will be getting one from the applicant.
Okay, I'll make a motion to put this to January, it's no public meeting,
Yeah,
public
sorry.
hearing.
That's okay, thank you. So this is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, so if anyone would like to comment on this, we'll be firming this up in the next month anyways.
I'll make a motion to continue this to January 12th.
And do I hear motion's made second for discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Next thing before us is Nantucket Theater Institute, 5 North Water Street. Mr. Cohen, good evening.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to let Mr. Santos go first. He has a 8 o'clock flight, and hopefully I won't have to repeat most of what he says.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen, for the board. I'm providing expert testimony tomorrow on a survey case in Connecticut, so I
can't.
do have a commitment that I have to be off island. The site before you is the Nantucket Theater Institute, which is a proposed project at the intersection of North Water and Whalers Lane. North Water Street is on the attached map, runs in essentially a north-south direction, with Whalers Lane running in an east-west direction. The existing site is located in the CDT zoning district, which requires a minimum lot size of 3,750 square feet, a minimum frontage of 35, a front yard, 0 front yard setback, a side and rear setback of 0 feet and 5 feet, a maximum ground cover ratio of 75%, and a minimum open space required, as it is an MCD, of 30%. It is located in the following overlay districts: the Formula Business Exclusion District, the Town Overlay District, and the Core and Resident Parking Permit District. Where it's a CDT, the parking requirements obviously have been eliminated. The site itself is 8,070 square feet, contains a ground cover, existing ground cover of 20.4%, with a 2-story building of 1,315 square feet, and a 1-story building that recently had been acting as a real estate office in this area here of approximately 333 square feet. That smaller building under this current proposal is to be removed. The site is located within a flood zone under the new mapping which took effect in June of this year. And the elevation across the site is about 6 at the northerly corner to about 9 at the intersection of Whalers and North Water Street. Flood zone elevation being in this area 8.9 on the map. So the proposal is to construct a new freestanding structure shown on this plan in blue. The existing 5 North Water Street original structure, the white dwelling, will stay in its current position. The proposed ground cover, when this plan is enacted, would be 56.8%. Again, the requirement being 75%, or max requirement in the CDT zone. The proposed height of the building would be approximately 34 feet. Both the building, the height, and the design of the building has been approved by the HDC. And I don't know, Steve, do we have that package? I think you have a packet there, which is this board, the landscape plan, the approved set of HDC plans, and then the actual minutes from the HDC meeting to which the project was approved. The site itself does require a filing with the Conservation Commission. We are before them in December 17th. It's a public hearing for work on the property that is subject to coastal storm flowage. There are no wetlands per se on the site, but that requirement in the flood zone does require that we file with them. That in turn triggers our requirement for a Mass DEP stormwater management. We have to meet the Mass DEP stormwater management standards. That application is filed with the state at the same time of the notice of intent. The application itself sets forth a subsurface shallow drainage system which will handle all of the roof runoff from the proposed structure. That area is an infiltration system with an overflow into the existing drainage system located on North Water Street. We'll be happy to make that complete filing available to the commission if they see fit, but the drainage system will be reviewed by both the state and the Conservation Commission as part of our proposal or application to them. The site itself would be tied to both public water and sewer. Both systems have been upgraded recently as part of the Phase 2B downtown sewer and water replacement project. There is new sewer and new water services located in Whalers Lane, and the site itself will tie to both of those. The site will be completely tied to telephone, electric cable. All those services will be provided underground. The existing system right now is a mix of overhead and underground systems in both Whalers and North Water, but the site itself will be tied completely to an underground system, so no overhead wires to the proposed structures, it's a new structure itself. In your packet, you see a landscape plan. That landscape plan incorporates bicycle racks, buffer plantings, common areas, all within the project limit itself. The open space requirement, as set forth in the application, is 26.6%. Again, the MCD does require the 30%, but we feel that the landscaping plan set forth is sufficient in that the waiver is justified, and Steve has asked for a waiver as part of our application. I will note that if you look at the landscape plan itself, there's an interior courtyard with a stone patio, a Goshen stone patio in that interior area. That area itself, under the definition, does not count as open space. It hasn't been included, but that stone patio area, if you were to include it as open space, the 30% threshold would be met. The only allowance that we have for impervious services is the 10% for brick walkways is allowed to count as open space, up to 10% of your lot area. We have taken that credit. However, the stone patio on the interior has been excluded, hence the fact that we're under the 30% open space. The building itself is L-shaped in form. If you see here, Whalers Lane, then running the north to south. The building is set back approximately 14 feet off of North Water Street and approximately 4 feet at the jog on Whalers Lane. It is 2 feet at the main section of the building off Whalers Lane, so as not to create a sightline issue at the corner. There are also plantings proposed along the North Water Street, trees along the North Water Street streetscape. We have indicated that as part of the application and as part of the work itself, that any sidewalks that are in front of the site on both Whalers Lane and North Water Street would be repaired and or replaced as necessary for the entire section of the project. The lighting plan itself would be completely compliant with the town bylaw. The Chapter 102, and everything would be dark sky compliant. For the most part, you'd have some low interior lighting along the interior patio area and some, again, building lighting to meet the code requirements along the building itself. There are no parking spaces proposed as part of the project. Most of the traffic to the site would be a pickup, or drop-off, or foot traffic. Deliveries, trash removal would all be handled in a typical fashion of a downtown project. The trash removal is in an enclosure in between the two buildings along the northerly property line. In this area here, it is depicted on the landscape plan. The site would be completely compliant with the handicapped access, as it's a new structure. There is also a set of soil erosion construction narrative which have been provided to the Conservation Commission, but are also on the MCD site plan that you see before you. As I said, so the only two waivers I believe that we're talking about here are with regard to the height of the building, which is the 30 to 34 feet, the open space requirement, which is 26.6 against the 30%, and I believe those are the only two waivers of the, what's that, Steve?
Site plan.
And the site plan requirement? Well, I guess the site plan, to the extent that, you know, we're not submitting a drainage report to this board, essentially it's being reviewed by the Conservation Commission. As I said, we'd be happy to have it, the stormwater report submitted, but again, I think that's being done by part of the state and Conservation Commission. So for that regard, with regard to the drainage report, we are asking for a waiver of that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
You got it.
In the staff report, their notation said that there were some new concepts that we hadn't previously discussed that you were going to be talking to us about, or did Paul just cover all that?
No, I'll cover that. So the only other issue that we did apply for a waiver for, and it was just sort of preemptive, is for the inclusionary housing requirement. And the draft decision that I provided, that I think staff has reviewed and marked up, does not grant a waiver of that, which we anticipated, which is what I drafted, but what we're looking for is a confirmation that the two-bedroom apartment that's in the existing building covers that issue. So I just wanted to point that out as additional relief that's addressed in the decision. Otherwise, Paul covered the waivers.
Stay there for a second, Steve.
Sure.
But you're not looking for us to restrict the two-bedroom apartment in the existing structure as the inclusionary housing? There's a lot of restrictions to that.
We're looking so I guess we could do it as a waiver granted with the recognition that
That there is one on the site.
that apartment covers the intent and that no inclusionary housing is necessary.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
That actually would be better. If you have, I believe, in front of you the decision, the draft decision that I provided to staff that's marked up, it has on page 6 of 8 a blurb in yellow at the bottom. I think is what staff is referring to. That Linda, this is something that we discussed in response to a question that you asked maybe 3 or 4 times at the last hearing as to whether or not a tent would be required. No tent is proposed or intended, but what we think we're going to run up against is the ban on construction in the downtown is not going to allow us to be finished. And what we don't know yet is whether or not we'll be able to have enough of a shell to get a temporary CO so that you can essentially have a theater that is I don't want to say unfinished, but it's an incomplete finished product, but it would allow you to have one season in a building where part of it is not all built out, and then you come back later and finish it. The alternative to that, if it looks like we either wouldn't get that far or that it wouldn't make sense, is to do all of your site work, all of your infrastructure, your basement, and cap it, and then essentially do a tent or some temporary structure on that site. And what I don't want to do is get to the point where we have one or the other, and then get a temporary, have perhaps Steve Butler, the building commissioner, telling me, okay, I'll give you a temporary CO, but then the zoning, then looking at the MCD permit, and the MCD permit says basically you have to do everything or nothing. So what we're looking for is some relief to allow for either a temporary CO of a portion of the actual structure, or in the alternative to have essentially the infrastructure installed, the basement installed, then a tent for one season. And then I recognize that if we did end up with a tent, that you would not have the ability to grant us an extension over 30 days. So we would either do just the 30 days or go to the zoning board for that. So that's the notation and the decision that I think the staff is referring to.
Well, Andrew, we've approved the tent for the whole 4 months before without the ZBA involvement.
No.
Did they?
You have approved the tent concurrent to us getting a waiver from the ZBA twice.
All right, so you'd be going back to them for a third time?
If we want to do more than 30 days, and if that is the plan, then we would go back to we would have to go to the zoning board. If we either don't need a tent or don't want to do more than 30 days, we wouldn't.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Joe? Yeah, a couple little things. Sort of like from Millie's. Facility shall not have more than 150 seats.
Yep.
Can be meaning to seat 150 persons. Can we say that? That there could be 150 people there, no standing room only.
Yeah, I think that we could make that clarification. I think if you mean in the auditorium.
Correct.
Sure. Yeah. We currently projected out at 140 seats in the design. That may tweak a little, but we live in it to 150 if we decided to, for some reason, to go more. I don't know that most theaters have standing seats. I think usually what you'd end up with is a couple of spaces that are reserved for wheelchair access.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, you talk about, or it's mentioned about people queuing on the public sidewalk, and
Yes.
that you'll do something about it if that becomes an issue?
Yeah, well, what I drafted says we won't, and what the staff put in is that if there's an issue, that you have the ability to add, by notice of the planning board, to require that we have staff to address the problem. Based on the way the building is designed, queuing should be in the courtyard, not on the sidewalk.
I understand. But do you think we could get a cell phone, a dedicated cell phone?
Yeah,
Just to have somebody
absolutely.
call during the summer?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, but so the neighbors have somebody to call? So they,
No, yeah, I think
You know what I mean?
it is a common condition that a manager on duty cell phone should be
Yeah.
provided to the planning board. That's fine.
Anything else
that's it for me, yeah.
from staff? Yeah, go ahead. I got something too, I gotta pick up on. Go ahead.
Want me to go first?
Now, you may catch it.
I'm just trying to read on the plan, at the corner of Whalers Lane and North Water Street, is there a firebox there, or something looks like it's in the
No, that's a subsurface pipe.
underground? Okay,
underground.
okay. One of the things that we did talk about at some point was, would it be possible to flare that corner? It comes to a kind of a 90-degree turn there, and
When there's a car parked across Whalers to, on the other side, Steve, you can't, it's hard to turn right.
It is.
So you want to pull the sidewalk and the corner of the lot in but a few feet?
right, it would be an easement, and,
Around it.
you know, it might affect the total area of your waiver, but I think it would make that corner,
Yeah.
Kind of flush it.
Right, so you're talking that the sidewalk would essentially shift to where that first tree is, like the canopy of the tree?
yeah, sort of run
Something
right
like
along the
that?
edge of it, yeah.
Yeah.
There'd be no problem with it.
I don't-
The building's set back far enough, both sides, there'd be no issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 3 feet, yes?
Yes, small.
Sure.
And drop the curb so the crosswalking vehicle can turn on there.
Right, to make that corner, yeah, I know, I get it, because
Good.
um,
Yeah.
I think we would, staff could propose some language for that, but I think you'd need an easement for it, and then we would have a site plan adjustment for it.
Yeah, the biggest obstacle would be, I got 2 poles right here, there's a utility pole here and a utility pole here, and that would be a big unit. Yeah, it's getting that, really, the utilities, moving the utilities is more of the issue than anything else. But as far as the building and what the plan is, no problem, it's just the utilities at that corner.
How hard do you think that is, Paul?
Well, anytime we move a pole, it's,
That's a public hearing.
yeah, it's an issue.
Well, so the selectmen would have control over moving the pole. It's a public sidewalk, you know, so it, to the extent we could go forward with the construction permit and deal with that through
Yeah.
staff or through some other, you know, appropriate method.
Okay.
Was there anything else?
Nothing for me. No.
Just one other question. Leslie, did you go through this draft that we got?
Yes,
And-
all the changes that are shown are changes that,
So the other one that caught my attention was on page 2 of 8, where they list what they're using the top floor for. And you red flagged something out that said otherwise,
Yeah.
which I agree with.
Yes.
Did that ever get to resolution?
No, when I said otherwise, I think a better terminology would be associated arts-related activities, ancillary activities. Otherwise, I agree, is a bit broad.
Yeah, that is a bit broad. So, but you'd mesh your next sentence in back to that, and get rid of the otherwise. is what-
That's right. I
Okay.
think we would replace that word with something like ancillary and associated activities.
That may need just to be tightened up even a titch too. Related, yeah.
Right,
because
related to the facility, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yes, please, Carl.
Are you leaving right now, Mr. Santos? Did I
Stand. Yeah, go ahead, go.
did I miss that? Are you jacking the building up 4 feet from 30 to 34 feet for the flood zone, or did I miss that?
No, but this is a new build, this is gonna be a new freestanding building.
Right.
So the only requirement we have to meet the flood zone is the existing site's around 8, and we have to be up around 8.9. So the 34 feet is just the structure that they're using, the architectural design, that's just what the 34-foot requirement is.
Yeah.
And you're not planning on jacking the building up for the future flood zone requirements?
No,
You don't have
this-
to?
This new construction will meet the current flood
Okay.
zone regulations.
Okay, got it.
the first floor elevation will be elevated to meet the requirement.
Beautiful, thanks. Do get out of here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Was there anything else from staff or any board members? All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to weigh in on this, would appreciate it. Not seeing anyone.
Is this decision close enough where we can close the public hearing, vote on it, and sign it in the office? Or do we need to come back to us again and fool around with it more?
There are just some minor details that aren't substantive that I can
Okay.
work out with Stephen. Other than that, I think it's good to go.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, and just for the record, at this point, I believe Mr. Borchard has sat and everything, so since Mr. McLaughlin isn't here, this is a special permit as well, so we're going to activate him for this run. Okay, thanks. So that motion is made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
I'll make a motion to approve with the decision to be signed in the office.
Do I hear a second? I second that. Motion's now made and seconded for discussion.
And that would include a waiver of the inclusionary housing, acknowledging that there is a two-bedroom apartment
Sure.
on the site.
Anything else on that? All right, so the motion's now made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff.
All right, so let me see here. 1814 Cumberland Farms is continued at this stage. 1914, Mr. Bodett, you did continue that Mattocket Millie's, is that correct, or?
Yeah, I talked to staff.
Staff, I got that impression. I just wanted to be firm, just firm that out.
Okay.
He'll file one, I'm sure, if that's the case. Extension.
You're going to need an extension.
For the action deadline?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Can I ask a question about that?
Well, you know what? I'd prefer not to at this point because that imposes us opening the whole
No,
public hearing.
no. This, I don't think it is.
All right, all right, let me see where this goes.
How much longer is it going to get extended after this extension?
Well, it's
I don't
already
know.
Well-
to the 14th, which is past our next meeting.
Yeah.
So we don't really need it.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
you
might
do.
not need one. I mean,
The
Well,
meeting is
we
on the
need a
12th,
decision.
and we can't even file a decision within
Time
2
out.
days.
yeah.
Time out. I think Mr. Bodett is,
Yeah,
I think Mr. Bodett is willing to work with us. He gets the general gist at this point.
yeah, we're not looking for any constructive approval.
So I'll make a motion to continue this to Jan.
No. you're
Oh,
not
that's
gonna do
open.
It is continued. It is continued. We're just clarifying where we're at the moment. Let's be real careful. I do not want to
Hopefully
open
none.
the public hearing on this prematurely.
Hopefully none.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Thank you. All right. 7716 Valero is continued, which brings us to 7742 3M subdivision modification for Phil Whitty on 15 Gulfview Drive for the applicant. No one I see?
Phil's here.
Well, Phil's here.
Phil?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, just go.
He's just.
The applicant, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the zoning in this neighborhood allows for greater subdivision. The applicant has proposed to be allowed to do that. There was some concern from the commission that the road on either side of this locus could use some work. And what I think we talked about last time was that my client was amenable to conditions that it would essentially prevent further development of the lot beyond what he could do now, in the sense that he could do 2 dwellings now and things like that. But what he wanted to be able to do was subdivide that. And what we have, so in other words, a condition prohibiting additional second dwellings would be acceptable. I had suggested a condition prohibiting a second driveway onto smooth hummocks, and I think staff correctly pointed out that that wasn't as kosher as I had hoped it would be, but I think a way to get around it is to say that no driveway should be constructed onto smooth hummocks until it's improved until a certain level, which would have the same impact And that essentially, if the board wanted any other conditions that would make this look like, that would restrict overdevelopment, that those were acceptable. But what the board asked us to provide, and we have provided, is some numbers from Victor Brannigan that show what it would cost to improve 3 roads. One is Farm View and a portion of Golf View. The other one is Smooth Hummocks, and then the other one is the portion of Golf View from where it's paved down to Farm View. And I don't know if you have that information in front of you, but essentially it's $200,000 for Smooth Hummocks, it's $60,000 for the T at Farm View and Golf View, and then just doing the improvement at Golf View is only $4,000. And what my client would propose is that, and the other thing that we provided, and I think you have a copy of it, is a map that's highlighted that shows that there are, which lots are potentially large enough and have enough frontage that they could be subdivided if they essentially came forward and asked for the same relief my client is asking for. And I have a copy of it, but I believe it's been submitted to you. So you're looking at essentially 6 or 7 lots that could be that would be mathematically available for the same relief if you provided it here. My client would propose that some reasonable portion of the repairs would be contributed as a condition of the approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Go ahead.
Which option is the best for them?
Well, I mean, the quickest and probably most useful solution is the $4,000 for Golf View. The $60,000 for the T is obviously, not really viable for one lot.
Okay.
And I actually think it would have the most impact too, because it cleans up that whole. If Victor went and do that, he would put a crown on it. He would deal with the drainage. It would do a lot more than just make it more passable. It would eliminate other associated problems with that road besides just making it smoother to ride on.
4,000 would get that?
Yeah, that's Phil and Susan talked to them. They might be able to give you a little more detail.
Hello, everybody. Phil Whitty. The 4,000 solution was proposed by Victor. It's an aggregate. It is a hard surface. It's a quick fix for the portion between the paved ending of Golf View and down to Farm View. That's just a quick fix. That would not solve the drainage or anything else, but would make it smooth and passable. The real fix is the 60 grand with drainage and all that, which Victor says he can do.
Something you have in your plan down the road, literally and figuratively?
Well, that's what we're thinking about now, and it depends on you guys, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, that's what needs to be done eventually, absolutely. It's just a matter of how you apportion it out.
Through the chairman to staff, how do we write a decision that would cover the immediate stabilization and deal with the 60?
I think you have to.
Go ahead, Andrew.
You would establish some sort of payment schedule that you would hold in a gift account, and ideally, as other people would come in, they would pay into that as well. And at a certain point, unfortunately, there isn't a homeowners association that has any legal authority, is that right? Even though there's a group of homeowners that are engaged, I believe is the...
That's right. Unfortunately, the subdivision did not include that component.
So they wouldn't be responsible. What I'm getting at is they wouldn't be responsible at this time for the full 60 going somewhere. It would be their contribution to the 60. And then when the other 3 or 4 lots come in to be subdivided, which they will, they would have to pay into it. And at that point, at some point, there's a trigger where it has to get done, correct?
Well, yeah, that's what you could do. You could create a gift account, you could accept the money, you could create standards that when a certain amount is in, you would do a certain amount of work, or you could hold it. In reality, all of these lots should be paying for this, but that is not, the only way that could really happen is if they either voluntarily got together to do it, or if the selectmen came in and forced them with a betterment, but I don't know that there's any stomach for that. And frankly, I don't even know that the whole 60 should be paid for by either my clients or the neighborhood, because as you all know, this is a cut-through used by a lot of people that don't happen to live there, which is one of the reasons why you have so much wear and tear on it. But regardless, yeah, I think if the commission is willing to accept a reasonable portion of this being paid for by my client, we could make a contribution, some of which could be spent now if you wanted the $4,000 to go into the immediate quick fix, or if you just want a certain amount of money to just, if you want to skip that and just put money into the 60, that would be your decision.
Diane, go ahead.
Several years ago, it was proposed, since Golfview is a privately owned road, that they pave it and everybody would contribute to the paving of it going up. And it was, the only people who contributed were the first 3 houses on the south side and the four houses on the north side, and the rest of it has been unpaved. So I'm not sure, having had this happen once, that it's going to be easy to get everybody to contribute. But the other thing I was wondering about is, are they proposing to pave smooth hummocks, which I think is, I thought we had a town thing that said no more paving of dirt roads.
Let me clarify. My client does not want to pay for smooth hummocks and does not want to see smooth hummocks paved. But what the planning board could do is say that no one is allowed to install a driveway onto smooth hummocks unless it is improved, and that would act as essentially a financial and legal barrier to having all these curb cuts go in there on that side of the road, because it's prohibitively expensive and undesired.
It's a difficult road to make curb cuts because of the sand and the kind of dirt that's on either side. It's going to make one has to look at the construction of what's there.
Yeah. No one wants to do it. I had only suggested that as a way for the board to have some confidence that there's an impediment for making it happen.
Can I just explain that?
Because I've got a question or two.
You can't create frontage on a road that you have an absolute barrier to get to.
Yes.
It does not meet the definition, so you cannot prohibit it completely.
Thank you.
And
You can't prohibit
Let's
you cannot prohibit
Ken, time out.
access to that road. So you can't put a barrier and then claim frontage.
Right.
Right. So the suggestion is to tie it to further improvements. There is no active plan to improve that road at this point. It has been discussed at different times. It would provide a direct route to Bartlett Farm and some of the other things. It had been attempted to be laid out as a public road in the 30s, which failed. And what you had mentioned, Diane, is there's a prohibition on paving new roads in the country overlay district, and this is on the edge. This is town district on the developed side, country on the other. So
you pave half the road.
yeah, I guess so.
So, if I may, Andrew, and to you, Steve, this is gaining its frontage off of smooth hummocks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and I have to agree with Andrew. You can't artificially put a barrier in place. So that's you just did.
Well, I think Andrew and I are in agreement that what you can't do is prohibit the use of smooth hummocks, but what you can do is put a condition in place that says if you want to use it, then you need to make these improvements.
Right.
But how can you? All right. So if this is gathering its frontage off a smooth hummock, but this applicant doesn't do anything at all, isn't that rather unfair to the rest of anyone who does something in the future?
Well, at this point, it would treat them all fairly.
Okay.
I mean, it would focus on we asked them to provide the estimates which
Yep.
they have, and if you were to divide the cost of the 60,000 plus the 4,000 among those that would benefit through the subdivision.
Right.
That's the amount of money that could be put aside. What you wouldn't do is put any money aside per se from these people to develop pavement on smooth hummocks.
Okay.
Right. So
See,
they would be, again, focusing all their access off of the existing roadway from the subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, because one thing I heard you say was the homeowners are engaged. Well, I got to admit, with the number of letters that I received, that I looked at, and the tone of those letters, I walked away with a whole different picture at this point. I don't think the homeowners out there are engaged in the process of wanting to do improvements.
Oh, I don't think they do either.
There's this certain complacency of, like, the worse the condition is, the less it's going to be traveled.
Right.
And that kind of disturbs me a little bit, because instead of making things, I mean, because we look at, as a board, we look at access, all right? And really all that does is that continues to shift a traffic pattern around onto other roadways such as Somerset and back out onto Hummock, the long way around, just in favor of a group of individuals who, I understand, they don't want traffic in the area, but how is that fair to the rest of the town and trying to work together to provide good, you know, as a planning board member, I'm confused with that one.
Well,
Because I hear two different stories emerging out of this.
Yeah. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I know that a lot of people think that having a impassable road is a benefit because it slows down and is a detriment to traffic. This particular area is ironic because you have smooth hummocks, which is one of the most impassable roads, but is really sort of a direct, straight shot, and not really on anybody's neighborhood. And then Gulfview and Farmview are used as a slightly better but pretty bad alternative to that, and that's really cutting through what's essentially a private subdivision that really shouldn't be. Smooth hummocks is the road that should have been laid out properly as a public way and should have been improved. The planning board should take offense to the suggestion that road improvements should not be done. You know, and what my client is saying is that the 9 lots that could potentially receive a benefit by this decision should be paying for an improvement to Gulfview and Farmview to make that happen. No one, the people in the neighborhood have 2 objections. One, they don't want to have to pay for anything because they currently don't have a requirement in their subdivision requirement that requires them to. And 2, they don't want to see more traffic. But you know, most people who come in here seeking something from the planning board are told you have to make improvements to the road, whether it's, you know, Burnell Street or Swift Rock or any of the dozens of projects I've been on where people have to widen a road or improve a road. It's a typical condition for you for a second dwelling or for subdivisions, and it's an entirely appropriate condition, and it's one my client is willing to participate in appropriately. There are 9 lots that could benefit from this decision. If you divide this up by 6 of them or by 9 of them or whatever and put that money aside, it will, I think, greatly benefit the neighbors and the general public that's using this road.
So I guess here's my concern again, is that this begins to trip the A&R process, right? This one thing will trip an A&R process, right?
If we get relief, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that's the first thing. And I guess it now becomes a matter of those other 6 to 9 could be a year from now, they could be 10 years from now, they could be 20 years from now, they could be never. So how can we as a planning board be responsible both from a financial aspect as well as a long-term aspect to get these improvements done? The benefit is enjoyed up front. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no guarantee into what's going to happen with the future. And that just, it kind of is a concern of mine that I'm not feeling like is getting addressed.
Well, I agree with you, and part of the problem is that it's an individual benefit to the abutters. And what we don't know is if you're correct, we don't know if the other 8 people who mathematically qualify are going to come forward and want to do it. If they don't, then there's no other way the planning board can currently require the road improvements, and you also haven't seen a further development in the area. So there's a proportionate benefit to the money that's spent and the improvements are done compared to the subdivisions that are approved. So I think that if nobody else comes forward and does this, then it's because there's no more subdivisions and no new houses. Or frankly, they could, if they come in and they want second dwellings, you could start you could impose this condition on some of those second dwelling permits.
Yeah. So, but let me just finish one thing. Andrew, let me ask you a question then. If the fee that's set forward today, let's say 10 years down the road, and another person decides to subdivide there, the costs have gone up underneath doing more improvements. Are we locked into whatever that figure is today, or is that figure mutable for 10 years down the road?
No, it's,
To other individuals?
we're not lifting this restriction on all the lots. It's really just affecting, it's a single request from this particular lot.
Okay.
We will have to grant the same relief. I mean, it is a condition that is now affecting the other properties. So as they come in, you will have the ability to consider that.
Yeah. But I think you could change the number. So example, if my client was charged $5,000 or $10,000, and someone comes in 5 years from now and you want to charge them $15,000, you can. Is that your question?
I think that's part of it right there. I
Yes.
just want to make sure that flexibility is there for us to be able to do that.
It is.
Anyone else on the board?
Yeah,
Did you?
yeah, go ahead, Nat.
I'm sorry.
You know, just forget this application for a second, Steve, okay? This is Boulevard Light. This is an oil sand mix subdivision. It was done poorly because of the time that it was done. I mean, that's just how things were.
Right.
At one time, this was a raceway, for a little while, anyway, as they call it. And I don't think it's our, I don't want to say problem, or is it our problem to solve, but how a neighborhood gets built brand spanking new 30 years ago, and all of a sudden, everybody likes it to look like it was used for no man's land. You know what I'm saying? For practice, for the military. I mean, that is the worst road on Nantucket right now that used to be paved, or kind of is paved. I mean, people have a right to subdivide. And if everybody out there wanted to do this, there wouldn't be so much opposition. But when they want to do it, you know, someday, they'll all be back here for the same thing, and we'll all be older.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I just think that, I mean, I do understand, you know, Andrew's right about smooth hummocks, and I agree. I mean, smooth hummocks, if I had my way, it'd be paved 20 years ago, because that's the way to go around Hummock Pond, and it's almost a bike route, really. It would end up being a bicycle route. But this is a different type of situation right now. I mean, the road needs to be repaired. These people have a right to subdivide. Is there any sunsets out there that are kind of expiring now?
They're expiring now.
Right, that's because it's 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And
So
what
there
are those, and what are they?
If there's a restriction on second dwellings out there,
That's
there's a
right,
whole
yeah.
bunch that are all, if they're
And
not
that's all
expired
going
now,
out
it's
the window.
like any day now, yeah.
And we've seen that at Mizzenmast, that people start popping up.
Right.
When these things come in.
So if you want to suggest that the economy is going to get people's attention, or, you know, when my client sells and they see the number, that's going to get people's attention, I think that's right. I think
Yes,
you'll see
that's what I
other
think,
people
too.
say, hey, that looks good to me, and then they'll be in here, and the planning board can say, great, we would love you to contribute to the same fund to improve the road.
Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
Just one thing, this was part of my postal route for some 20 years, so I see it day by day. And yeah, it's a little hard on it, particularly in the middle. I think a lot of people that live on Gulfview would not be looking forward to seeing it paved and going up, because everybody sort of who knew the island at all, coming from the south side, is going to use Gulfview, cut down Farmview and onto Bartlett Farm, rather than making the big square and coming around. And the increase in traffic on Gulfview would become a lot for people who live there, who chose to live on that rotten road when they were given a choice. So I think you just have to keep that in mind.
Joe, did you?
Yeah. I don't understand why we would want to take the money and then arrange for the construction later, the way the planning board would do that. I mean, what I would rather see is that the 60,000 be put up, the work gets done, and then when the other people come in, they refund the money to your client.
I'm not sure that you can legally do that, and it's actually, and it's.
No, I understand,
yeah, and
because
it's
once it's paved, then it's,
Yeah. Paying it back to my client sounds questionable, and it's also
Well-
a fairly high burden on my client for going first, but I mean, when you have someone coming in and doing a major subdivision, they bear all the development costs, it makes sense. But here we're talking about one 20,000 square foot lot getting cut in half. It's not.
no, I understand that part is bad, but I don't understand why we would want to be in the development business. Do we have a lot of these funds floating around and who's going to administer it? And we need to get some plans done too. Victor can't just go out there and pave,
Andrew, please.
Well, this is an unusual situation. If this had been handled correctly the first time,
I understand.
So we have to employ some reasonable, alternative here, or, either you can say just no, or if you're willing to consider it, there has to be some reasonable approach to it. Under normal circumstances, all of the property owners would pay into that fund annually. The road would be kept up. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't really accept this subdivision could have been laid out completely differently. It could not have had through roads that connect. That is a consideration that that's important to the board. If you were going to make dead-end roads everywhere, you would see that on the plan, and we would have worse traffic than ever before. Right. So I know people don't want through traffic, but I also know that the people that live on through roads don't want to bear all the traffic. And, rightly or wrongly, the board designed this in a way that did connect through. So that if the choice is Somerset or Gulfview, there has to be one choice. And, I can drive down Somerset in my non-four-wheel drive car. Smooth Hummock, sorry. It was laid out as Somerset in the 30s, so.
Before our rain.
But normally you're right, we wouldn't do this, but, we're talking about one property owner. I don't have the other ones here at the same time. And, I don't think it's fair to assess all the burden on one property owner that wants to do something. If you all have a better idea, I'm certainly open to it.
Go ahead, Carl.
After the Boulevard work several years ago, this is primarily a question for you, Mr. Vorse. Is this another test case for a booming town where these old subdivisions are affected? And is it a test case for property rights for the individual to subdivide his lot? And is this going to keep, I think it's going to keep happening again and again because, let's face it, this is a boom town, and we have some undeveloped roads, we have some potholes, we have some lakes. What are we going to do about this? I mean, we're going through this again like we did several years ago with the Boulevard, had craters. So I'm new on this board, relatively speaking, but I'm curious, do you have an opinion on a test case versus versus a private property owner who wants to subdivide his lot? I don't want to take too much time here, I'm just curious.
The boulevard is a product of that same era. So it was an oil sand road, again, in hindsight, that was not a good, application. It didn't hold up, and homeowners associations weren't formed. So it's from a similar group of not good decisions, right? So in that case, that road serves a clear public interest to connect through to the airport, and now that we're moving forward, and I don't know what the final formula is about betterments versus, but a lot of it is town investment in that infrastructure. Here, remember that this group of properties was in a 5,000 and a commercial district, and, they did work with us to get that zoning changed. The zoning doubled here to R10. So this went from a much more open, possible boom town to a much more characteristic suburban area, in conformance with its existing layout. I don't think that the whole neighborhood should take on a burden like Smooth Hummocks Road. I think that should be shared by the town if that were going to be implemented. But I see the other point here is that there can't be barriers at all times. The planning board laid the road out, they required the infrastructure, and it was a through road for a reason when it was first laid out. If they had thought something differently, there would be a cul-de-sac there, or they wouldn't have required it to be paved, and it was.
So I think at the end of the day, either you can turn us down and nothing will happen, or we could have some improvement. I think one thing that's good about my client's proposal is we could spend that $4,000 right away and get some immediate impact on that portion of the road. And we're setting up a system where if other people see that they want to, if they qualify for the subdivision, there's a clear set of rules you can follow and a clear fund you can contribute to, and everybody would be clear about what would happen with that money. This is the best, easiest way to get that road improved. If you turn us down, which you can, it's not gonna, nothing's gonna happen. And if you make my client pay $64,000, I doubt that's gonna happen too, or $200,000. This is a mostly year-round community of people who are, working every day.
Who will administer the fund? That's the...
Well, it would be the planning board. So it would be a gift. It would be a gift account, and we would have to put a little thought into how we write it. But at a certain point, generally we try to have these spent within a 7-year period.
If it's not spent, does the town get the money?
No, but again, I think we would have to write it in a certain way. I mean, the one that comes to mind is when Westchester, where that's the most similar process, where we had commitments from the developer there, and they weren't anxious to do the work, and eventually, planning board pulled the trigger and had that road done.
Mm-hmm. What about something like he does the $4,000 worth of work, puts $10,000 into this fund, and then when it gets to $60,000, I know there's 9 people, but when it gets to $60,000, if it's enough to do the work, then we'll do the work then. Something, rather than wait for everybody to get on board. That doesn't, because there's always one holdout that'll be there forever.
So
I think that's something fairly reasonable.
You're trying to generate the money with 4 or 5 lots instead of 9, is that?
Correct. Well, 6 lots would say. He's putting in 4, he's getting a subdivision for doing the whatever, a little bit of work. He's putting $10,000 into this fund. When it gets to $60,000,
right. What would you propose the next person would put in?
10.
10. So there's a extra cost. The first person has to pay for all the permitting and $4,000 extra. But cost to do it is.
I mean, yeah, that doesn't bother me at all.
And I got a question for you too, but go ahead.
Well, I did a little bit differently than Stephen, but just jotting it down quickly, that having some funds in the future towards smooth hummocks would be, I think, advisable. Yes, for
Yes.
either for ongoing grading or drainage or whatever. And if you take the 200,000 cost and divide it between the neighborhood, the town, and Bartlett, who all three, if you say, let's portion the cost equally for those three parties, and then through, there may be other charges for second dwellings or whatever, that, we are more around the 15,000. So if that's the same cost that we sort of establish, that everyone would pay that who is at least benefiting from the subdivision, I mean, it seems like it's not completely unfair.
Good.
The other thing that I think would be acceptable, my client certainly isn't trying to get some benefit where the clock runs out and they get the money back. I think if it was appropriate and legal to set it up as a gift fund, that if the money went unspent, that it would be gifted to the town for road improvement purposes at the direction of the planning board or the DPW or something like that. I think that the staff and town council could work up some way so that there wasn't just, the money coming back to my client later.
So, two things, Andrew. I'm glad you picked up on both points, because that's what I wanted to bring up, was to focus that we really should be looking at smooth hummock, because that's where the potential A&R starts to fall into place with this one. The second thing is, I'm also glad you brought up the fact that it's not just the town nor the people who will benefit from the A&R, but Bartlett should be engaged in this process as well, too, because that, strange enough, is where most of that traffic's going to be heading as well, too. So
Or the brewery could be.
Yeah, but again, those people on that road are benefiting through virtue of their business, and that is a very popular way to bring people in through that area. So anything we could do to make that a better truck, I think, would be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is a step in the right direction, and it sets up a way to start collecting some of that money. And if the town wants to start thinking about doing a taking of that road and a betterment, as Andrew laid out, it certainly didn't sound inappropriate. But, there's a lot of neighbors that would want to participate in that process, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I like this because it'll start the ball rolling into that direction. Should the town decide in the future to do it, at least they've got something to start working with now from a financial perspective.
Right. The one thing I don't know off the top of my head is whether or not the portion of the farm that abuts that is restricted or not. I mean, I know that the people are using that road to get to the farm stand and to get to the Cisco and stuff, but I don't recall if that portion of the farm is restricted or if it could be developed. But, really, that's for a separate conversation.
It is restricted.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking all along.
Okay. Is there anything else from the board or staff before I open the public hearing at this stage? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment on this?
Motion to close the public hearing.
All
Second.
right. Do you kind of have, just quickly before I do that for discussion, staff, do you feel like we're kind of at a good juncture to where you can work with Mr. Cohen and the applicants to,
Yes, based on what you all do as a board.
yeah, no, I understand, but
Yeah.
I just want, I'm getting the sense that since there wasn't a lot of cross-talk on that last thing.
Can we go over, Andrew, the money part?
Well, let's,
No. I don't want to close the public hearing until we're all solid on that page. So please, I think this is an appropriate juncture for you to ask that question. No, he's
No, I just want to understand what he is understood.
Right, that's okay, we can get there. This is important to get this all hammered out now before you close the public hearing, so we're all on the same page. So please.
Okay, so, again, this is some quick math here, but I took the 200,000, assigned 64,000, which is a third of it, to the group of neighbors. And then another 60,000, which was the, I guess, the second tier of work, the farm view to golf view, and then the 4,000 of immediate work. And then divided that by 9, and we're so it's 128,000 roughly divided by 9, so roughly 14,000. So that would still leave, again, on these current prices, the town in the future to pay somewhere around 63.5, and whoever, if it's Bartlett, the direct abutter, or a group of others that would benefit, the other cost.
So is that $4,000 repair going to get done now?
Yes.
As part of, and it's part of this 14, coming out of this 14,000?
Right, so they would,
Okay,
they would
that's
do the,
fine.
they would do the repairs now for
put
the
it-
4,000, and then there would be another 10,000 put
Okay.
in the account.
I'm fine. Yeah, it's cool.
All right.
So, and I think that Andrew's math came up with that number using just the 9 lots that could potentially subdivide, but as he noted, you could also get some amount of money from people who wanted second dwelling permits and other things, although you might discern that less from them or whatever. And then, of course, there's some number in there for the other butters and for the town, but that would all be part of a future conversation about the taking and improvement of smooth hummocks. So I conferred with my client briefly, and except that math works.
Good. Linda?
But all that is predicated on Bartlett's, how do you force Bartlett to pay? How do you force Cisco Brewers to pay? How do you force any of those guys to pay if they don't do anything?
If the town wants to take the road and better it, I think Andrew's laid out what he thinks the percentage should be.
Yeah, but how do you force them to do it? They don't have to participate. Where's the legal mechanism to make Bartlett's participate?
Yeah.
It's a betterment. They are assessed a betterment. And
Because they're in a
They have
butter.
to pay for it,
Yeah.
yes.
But they're
but
not in a butter.
Yeah, but I want to be very clear that my client is not proposing the improvement to smooth hummocks, nor is the planning board proposing the improvement of smooth hummocks. But what we are considering here is that if that happens in the future, because the town or county decides to take the road, that Andrew is pre-collecting some portion of that money in his calculation. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on that.
But that doesn't assure that the 60 is going to get done at any time soon.
Well, I think by collecting a larger sum of money, you're going to hit the 60 pretty quickly.
And then we go ahead and trigger that.
Right,
No
you're
matter
only
what's
gonna-
going on with smooth hummocks, we
Yeah.
trigger the golf
You're-
view.
You're only going to need 4 lots to hit that.
All right.
Okay. All right, so,
And,
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
as
sorry.
Leslie pointed out, that math was predicated on 9 additional
Right.
subdividable lots, and it's,
Correct.
I think I've heard different numbers.
It's 9.
well,
But maybe
that's a
they
little
want
tougher
to.
I think let's keep it clean. Let's keep this clean for the moment.
8. But because of the... Okay, so yes, we're good.
I'll make a
All right.
motion to close the public hearing.
All right, so the motion is to close the public hearing. Second, is there any other discussion? Mr. Lowell did second that earlier. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And...
I'll make a motion
Hold
to-
on. Whoa, time out. I'm sorry, I should have done this. Mr. Portrait, you've sat in on all these, because I'm not clear. Diane, did you sit on all these too, dear?
Mr. Chairman, this is a...
No, this is regular, I'm sorry, it's not a special permit. Mea culpa. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure we're all above the board here. Yes, it'll just be the 4 of us at this point.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve with the payment as specified by Andrew earlier, which comes out to about $14,000, with the $4,000 being expended immediately to stabilize the road.
I'll second.
The motion's now made and seconded. Discussion. Andrew, you're clear on everything now? Thank
To
you.
be signed in the
Good.
office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That's unanimous vote by this board. Thank you, everyone, for working with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Hopefully it'll result in the road improvements.
It cannot get any worse.
Instituted this plan.
Next thing before us at this point is 7761, which is the Paddock Lane subdivision on 68 Hooper Farm Road. For the good evening. How are you, Mr. Malloy?
Good evening, Dan Malloy for the applicant, Paddock Lane, 68 Hooper Farm Road. We hear last meeting, the open issues were questions regarding the status of the sewer system servicing the property. I have looked into that. I've talked to the builder contractor who put it in terms of, as well as maintenance that's been done on it. There's an underground tank that services the buildings that are there now. There's a pump in it. It's my understanding it's a 5,000-gallon tank. Maintenance history-wise, there was a pump failure sometime in the last few years, which I think was the question of the failure or backup. That has since been obviously fixed. The system is working. From an engineering standpoint, a 5,000-gallon tank is more than sufficient to service what's there now and what could be in the future. So unless you're looking for more information, I'm very confident that what's there is more than capable of taking care of it, as long as the sewer system, if you choose to approve it, is included inside the homeowners association as obviously as maintenance. The other question that was out there, which you did offer to do as well, obviously, is regrade the driveway and the road, fill in the potholes, bring more gravel out there. And those are the only real questions, issues that were raised.
Board members, anything? Yes, Mr. Mark.
Did we ever get the bike path donation decided upon?
I don't believe we talked about that at the last meeting, but the board has suggested a donation of $2,000 per dwelling unit, and I think that's per new dwelling unit. Two, I believe.
Do you want to look at it as, that shouldn't be a problem, how do you want to present that, as new? In terms of what can be new, you're only looking at one new dwelling. One lot has a duplex on it now, one lot has a second dwelling, well, what would consider be a second dwelling cottage, so, I mean, that's perfectly fine in this case, but I just want to let you know, you're only looking at one, potentially one new dwelling, is all you can see out here.
Well, I always thought it should have been 2,000 per unit. That the new dwelling was sort of a aberration.
I know recently the board did per new dwelling unit, but I think that the dwelling unit on one of the lots is kind of questionable, and we had asked about how it was permitted.
Right, there is a
So-
building on there now that was permitted as an office building, so that could be looked at differently as a subdivided, now it's a new dwelling. That's certainly possible, so now you're looking at two new dwellings potential, or two new and two existing. It's up to, how you want to look at it.
Go ahead.
Right, a bike path.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think that at minimum, it should be the two new dwelling units. There are some bike path needs in that area, including the extension of the, what is the Hooper Farm path down Dennis Drive, down to Surfside Road.
Yep.
So, which we have a funding gap, so.
I actually think the four, based on the amount of waivers that we're granting, I think that's appropriate. The four, well,
Board members, is there any other thought here? Go ahead. Joe, did you want to?
I would tend to be consistent with that it's whatever, there's 2,000 per unit.
We haven't done this in a while. This has been a while since we've done this, and we've done it once in a while. The small stuff.
Go ahead, Leslie.
The most recent one, which was Weatherly Place, the board only voted on the new structures. I don't know for sure. Right. I don't know for sure that that's what's been done in the past or not. I mean, usually we see subdivisions where they're all new structures being proposed. But that would be consistent with your last
There was
approval.
a time when we had this bike path fund thing that was kind of a revolving fund. Everybody was contributing. It was sort of an ongoing. And now we don't really, we look at the area now. More than we do just the bike path.
Right, and we had gone to the whole dwelling system instead of just kind of getting somewhat arbitrary figures at times in place, so at least there was some consistency about how to proceed forward, so. Go ahead.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
don't see much difference between new and what mostly gets done is complete rehabs, which is right next door to new. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, I do
Yes,
think
please, go ahead.
Mr. Marklinger has a good point that, they're not constructing a new road. It's a shared driveway of basically what's there already with some minor improvements.
That road there is going to stay there for a while because of what would happen if it wasn't. That truck, tow truck, right there. So, yeah, there's technically waivers, I agree with you on that, but I don't think we have to be perfectly, rigid in every single, cost we come up with per unit or what, now we're figuring waivers in because there's only one unit. I think we can come up with a fair number,
And
The staff is pretty good at figuring that out.
so, board members, what's your thought here? Because I've got two schools of thought beginning to emerge out of this, and I will tell you at this point, although Mr. Lowell likes to say yes on a case-by-case basis, there's also a very good need for this board to be consistent and fair in its application of certain things. So I need you to all be a little bit clearer about what direction you're heading here at the moment for this.
Yeah.
Yes?
2, end of story. They have a duplex, they're not changing it. I don't think we should be here to be usurious on this. I think they've got an existing duplex, nothing's happening to that, it's going over there on its own lot. 2 potential new dwellings, not structures, because one is not technically a dwelling. And that's 2 times 2,000, that's 4,000. That's what staff has sort of indicated is the way we should go, and I don't think we should start a new precedent. So I'm clearly stating 2 times 2,000 is 4,000. Is that what you're stating?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from the rest of the board. So go ahead. Yeah? No, I want you to all weigh in a little bit.
Road widths already, so. Well, personally, I think, and professionally, I think $2,000 per unit in a new subdivision is, I agree with Mr. Marklinger. That's all I had to say about it.
Diane, any thoughts here?
For new construction, I think the $2,000 is a good idea. What if the property beyond this is not developed more than it is? Who is going to pay for the further extension of the bike path?
So,
You're talking about
Yeah.
certain drive paths. Right, just to be clear on what you meant. He means where it goes by the H&R Block.
Yeah, right.
What Andrew's talking about, Diane.
and
There's a little bit of a plan to kind of extend it to.
Right,
this side.
but, say, if you're picking a developable lot, and then there isn't any more, it's all constructed, I just wondered how we finished paying for it. So,
Capital program. Okay.
And I'm going to tell you my own thought right now here at this point is I have to probably more agree with Mr. Marklinger, because that no matter when you have any kind of subdivision potential that's going on out there, even something as modest as this, again, you have to look at the fact that there's still a fair amount of income generated back to that person who's doing the subdivision. Let's be real here to a certain extent, so I don't mind that being $2,000 per dwelling, academic, pre-existing or not. That's correct. So you've got, I think you've got most of the board members kind of in agreement with that, is what I've detected.
If I could just add one
Yes, sir.
general comment to that, not to this item exactly for this lot, but in your consideration of this, just consider how you want to apply this going forward, only because I can tell you I have I know of, and I'm working on other projects that will be coming before you shortly with
Yeah.
a very similar question.
Yep.
So just to, for consistency, just to understand how you want to apply this in the future.
Right, and you understand why now I've asked this question, because I heard my board going into two different directions here.
I
So
completely
I'm
understand. I'm
yeah.
just looking for direction on this as well as future projects.
I mean, my point is, the road that this is on is not paved. We're asking them to contribute to something on the opposite side. The road, and this is Hooper Farm dirt, I call it the Hooper Farm dirt side, because I mean, that's what it is unlikely to get paved for reasons that I just stated a minute ago. We all know that that intersection is kind of one of those really wacky Nantucket ones where people pull out.
Right.
Crazy. If that got paved, it would change everybody's driving night ways in Nantucket. But you're asking for a waiver for something that we wouldn't even ask you to do in this spot. That's why I like to look at each one individually. But I agree that, yes, they should be paying for whatever improvement in the area that we had, and we did on Weatherly, right? We asked to pay for something specific, as I recall now. So, I mean, it's tough. Everyone is different. I still feel that way. I'm not changing my tune back to when we used to just ask everybody in Nantucket to pay the bike path fund when there was no bike path anywhere near the house. Because that's what we were doing when I first got on here for the first 5 years. Now we don't do that anymore because that's gone. When Cliff Road got done, that kind of things just kind of went away with that after that. So now we're back on individual spots. And Hooper Farm, the whole Hooper Farm Road bike path is junk. Everybody knows that. It was one of the worst jobs we've ever done. So does that mean that we should start a new fund to fix it? Some of these things go through the capital programs process, Gary.
That's true,
You
they
know
do.
how it works.
I've
I mean, you know what's
set-
going on. So
I do.
we're just asking for a little money for something that's already going to get paid for. This will just lessen the cost. So,
Good.
I'm not going to like vote hard lines so we don't do it. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Yep.
I don't really care if they pay $8 grand or $4 grand. I just feel my way of thinking about each one is more consistent than just decide,
So-
well, they can afford this today. You know what I mean? What's the next one going to be? If they have more money, are we going to ask them for more? I mean, that's not the right
No,
thing.
I think,
I mean, sometimes in the back of my mind, we think about people that are doing things, and I don't think that that's right either. So, end story.
all right. We are, excuse me?
I'm fine with either decision. This is
I
a
understand.
situation, Barry, for other projects.
I understand. So
You know?
I'm going to actually ask you two questions at this point. Is that I think we, as a board, have worked in conjunction with staff to agree that it's $2,000 per dwelling unit, all right? I would like that reaffirmed by this board somehow, so that we're good there. And the second thing is that you have to understand what action you take today begins to set the wheel in motion for other things, okay? My question to you becomes, do you want to just deal with this one individually, and then I'm going to have us, I'll tell you at the next meeting, we will be discussing this as a policy level decision to make this happen once and for all. Because I'm not going to keep going all around on this board without, just like everything, without having certain findings or reasonings behind why we keep changing the tune on this. I'm asking you to be consistent, and I'm asking you to be consistent at this juncture.
I'll just add one more thing.
Yes.
When I think of my thinking of each individual, looking at them individually, is the waivers. Some waivers are real waivers. More important, I guess I would say, waivers than something that's not really something that we were going to require anyway.
I agree with you.
Like street lighting. We
I
know
agree.
that we never do that.
I
But they're
agree.
real on paper, but they're not real that we would ask for them. So some projects we might determine that they need to pay way more money, depending upon what they're asking for.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm having a real problem with this whole discussion. Because now we're going to start charging for waivers, basically. And I don't think that's legal. And I'm not comfortable with that at all. However, if you've got a monster subdivision with 50 lots, which we won't see anymore, but if you have a monster subdivision with 50 lots, and they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on the roadways and the bike paths, that's different. The impact is huge. But I'm not going to start charging by the waiver. I'm comfortable with what we did before and what we've discussed before. So the consistent thing to do is charge, as staff said earlier, for the new dwelling units. Now, staff originally said it was one dwelling unit technically, but I think given the status of that structure, it's probably more realistic, two new dwelling units. We have a structure, but it's not a dwelling unit. We have two new dwelling units, and we have a duplex, which isn't bothering anybody. So if you're talking about consistency, then consistency is to charge for the new dwellings. Now, if we want to go wheel and take another direction and charge for every single structure or dwelling that's potentially going to be there, that, as you say, you wanted to have that policy discussion. But if we're talking about this one minor little thing that's not asking for a whole heck of a lot, and we have before this charged for new dwelling units, then that's what we should do on this project. To go and start charging for the duplex, $2,000 per unit. I'm having a problem with that, so I'm comfortable with the 2 times the 2,000 for the 2 potential new dwelling units like we did before. And if we want to do something else next time, then let's have that discussion. But to go 180 on this right now, on this minor thing, is a real problem for me.
Okay, so did you have anything else you want to contribute? Because I know what direction this is now going to take. Yes, please, go right ahead, sir.
I think the discussion on this has built-in protection. We as a board are next month are evidently going to have a discussion on this at the policy level, but these subdivisions are reviewed, and I can't really vote on them because they're residential, but I can comment, and we have a built-in process here that we're using already. These things are reviewed individually under the law, and each one will be reviewed in the future that way. So if you have a big problem with it, how can we have a big problem if we're just reviewing this as another proposal that comes up?
No, I'm having a problem county assessing what fine to what 2,000 to what unit, that's all. I don't have a problem with this subdivision, I've never had a problem with this subdivision. They worked out some of the issues that they had. The point is, do you charge for the duplex, which we didn't do with the past, which is existing, or do we just charge for the 2 new units, which is what staff suggested we do, because that's what we've done in the past. So that's why I'm holding 2 times 2,000. Not arbitrarily, all of a sudden coming up, we're going to charge them for the existing, which is not what we've done. And if we want to change policy, I agree with Barry, we have to sit down and have a discussion about that at some point. But this is not the time to do it.
Well, when is the time? I mean, this is an open public meeting where we can discuss a subdivision proposal.
That's
right.
I am going to respectfully disagree with you a little bit, Linda, because we're entering into some new territory here, and that's exactly why I wanted to have this discussion tonight. The new territory is some of these smaller subdivisions that are coming along that have pre-existing dwellings in them, all right? And that seems to be what this is turning on tonight. So I think Mr. Marklinger is in agreement at the moment that let's just look at the 2 dwellings that are going to be coming in tonight, all right? Which, again, this is a suggested contribution under which to do it. But I think to avoid further confusion at this point, I'm respectfully asking staff to make sure at our next meeting that we have this discussion to hammer this out. So if there is some consistency going into the future, I really don't want to delay on this because, as Leslie and Andrew both identified, there's going to be more of these coming along. And I don't want us stuck in this same rut that we're kind of in at the moment here right now, under which... Can I finish what I'm saying? I know you now have made your mind and you want to get rolling at this point, but I think I'm just asking that the board will deal with this at our next meeting. Is there anything else from the board on this? I know. Can you guys just hold your P's and Q's for a minute? It's getting a little aggravating. Mr. Boris, is there anything from staff that you have on this? Leslie, all right. Public
No.
hearings now. Sorry?
But we will
Leslie?
do some research on what the planning board has done with other subdivisions
And I
for
think
the
we-
next meeting.
Right, and I also think we need to turn our eye a little bit toward the future as well, too, if, like you said, more of these are going to be coming up, so. Thanks. This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, so if anyone would like to comment on this,
Motion to close the public hearing.
and do I see a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve with the assessment of $2,000 per new unit, which is a total of $4,000.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye, that's to be
Those-
signed in the office.
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I make one
Yes.
request after the fact? It's not a public comment for that.
Let's
Is
see
it-
where this goes. Go ahead.
It's very straightforward. I'm just requesting, if it's possible, since the board has voted to approve the project, if you could consider a vote to endorse the plans at this meeting rather than waiting until the next meeting. Only trying to get some things done on this project rather than waiting
Can we do
for a
that?
vote to endorse.
And Leslie, Andrew, you-
Mr. Chairman, I talked with Dan about this ahead of time. The plans haven't changed since they were presented, so I think that's a reasonable request.
Do I have to motion
Let's
again?
just make the
Okay,
motion to do it.
clarify my motion that it included the endorsement of the plans signed in the office.
Seconder agrees with it? Yep. Thank you. All those in favor still?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition to that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Votes reaffirmed. Next thing before us is 7770 Mariner Way subdivision at 78 Union Street.
Yeah. I like it. Everything was falling. I was like reaching for it.
Oh, okay. You could probably go for drinks.
Let's see about faces. Yes, ma'am. Have a good night. Thank you. Sorry, Mrs. Bodett, just had to take a second there.
Okay.
Catherine. Catherine, just for the record, Diane is going to be leaving.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Bodett, would you care to proceed?
Sure.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Rick Bodett for the applicant. I'm here with Jamie Anderson of R.J. O'Connell. What you have before you here is the subdivision for Mariner Way. It's a 5-lot subdivision plus the roadway. It should be fresh in your memory. I think we were here in September on the preliminary plan. It's right off of Union Street. This particular design of the plan takes into account a lot of the comments that the board had at the preliminary stage and that was approved as part of the preliminary plan. So Jamie will go through the technical aspects of the plan, and we're available for any questions you guys have.
Please.
Just get a little closer here so I can look at it. Good evening, Jamie Anderson for the record, here for the applicant SP Norwell LLC. I want to present the definitive plan you see in front of you, definitive subdivision plan for the nearly 1-acre lot located at 78 Union Street. Property is located in the residential commercial zone, RC zone, 5,000 square foot minimum lot size. The plan essentially remains the same, as Rick had mentioned, as the preliminary subdivision plan submitted back in September, and includes a 20-foot wide one-way road from Union Street to Washington Street extension, of which there is an existing gravel road today doing the same sort of thing in a more sinuous manner. The proposal is to subdivide into 5 buildable lots, each with access off of the new one-way road. Mariner Way will be bituminous pavement with, bless you, will be bituminous pavement with Belgian block curbing and Belgian block aprons at each new driveway. Proposed house dwelling locations have not been finalized at this time. However, we are beginning the process with the Conservation Commission. We will be submitting a notice of intent sometime later this month or early in 2015. And we will be showing a limit of alteration in conformance with the local bylaw. As you can see on this landscape plan, we are showing 11 deciduous proposed trees lining on either side of Mariner Way. This plan does show the limit of grasses as we intend on planting. Also shows a couple of restoration areas. The previously mentioned gravel driveway, we're going to put some restoration plantings here and here, which would be in the form of naturalized grasses. And existing tree cover, as you can see in the dark green on the plan, will remain on the sides of the property as shown, particularly in this area and this area as a buffer to the neighboring residences. If I may flip the plan over here. Quickly go through the remainder plans. This is our demolition erosion control plan. As everybody is aware, or potentially aware, the existing home located right there is in front of the HDC at this moment. Ongoing hearings are occurring, and the HDC has expressed interest in protecting the dwelling, and the applicant will be continuing those discussions. The existing garage has already been relocated. So just to go into a little bit of the erosion controls, there will be a construction fence along the perimeter of the proposed work. On the Union Street side, a straw wattle will be installed, and on the Washington Street extension side of the property, a silt fence with straw wattle will be installed for added protection of the wetland area. We are showing a construction tracking pad as well. In front of you is the lotting plan prepared by Blackwell & Associates, which shows all the proposed lot lines, lot sizes, regularity factors, etc., bearings and distances. As you can see on the plan, the lots are all a minimum of 5,000 square feet, all the way up to approximately 10,000 in the back. And they all meet the regularity factor of 0.55 or greater. I can list out some of the waivers we'll be asking for. The width of the road layout, 20 feet, does not meet the requirement of 40 feet. The road width of 16 feet does not meet the requirement of 20 feet. The minimum centerline radius of 110 feet does not meet the requirement. We aren't showing a bicycle path. We do not have street lights, and we do not have a sidewalk proposed at this time. Quickly on this plan, this is the grading and drainage plan. We are showing detailed grading for the subdivision. Grades will continue to gradually slope from the west to the east from Union Street down to the wetlands located towards the east along the back side of the property. We are proposing, a small amount of stormwater management for the project to improve the water quality. We are providing a bioretention swale located along that side of the road, and basically to improve the water quality. Runoff from the proposed roadway will be directed to that bioretention swale for treatment prior to discharge into the isolated wetland. infiltration systems. We would like to use as many as possible. At this time, we have not got a hard line on the groundwater for the project, for the property. We think that these two lots located along Union Street, we can get some infiltration occurring from the roof leaders. We would recommend using some sort of a Cultec system or a chamber system, something that would be shallow and potentially some more in the back as possible once we figure out exactly where that groundwater level is. Just a little bit more here on the utilities. The 5 lots will be served by utility infrastructure that will be constructed in the proposed road. Water and sewer will be brought off of the mains from Union Street. The water will be actually looped through the entire site, all the way down to Washington Street extension. And I'm here for any questions at this time.
Sure. Board members? Mr. Mocklinger? Go ahead.
Given the issues that are going on at the HDC, I think I'm the only one that's in favor of moving it out of there, but have you planned a contingency if you're forced to keep that house on the property? Or by moving, because right now the house is in the middle of the roadway on those front lots.
Yeah.
So you'd have to move it to the right to one of the 5,000 square foot lots that fronts on Union Street. Do you have a contingency plan for that? Because you don't have anything written here yet.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's probably the only contingency, to the extent the HDC doesn't allow us to demo it or move it off. I guess the next best thing, as far as we're concerned, would be to move it off. It'd have to be a move on site, and it'd probably move over to that first lot on Union Street.
Because you can look at the foundation from the street, and it's all cracked to smithereens.
Yeah. So, that's just getting up to speed on that, and I think that's going to be an ongoing issue. So.
Okay. Go ahead.
What problems do you anticipate when you go to conservation? Because you're in a flood zone. You've got the wetlands, which is delineated, but it's not approved yet. I mean, do you think you're going to have to change the plan much, or have you met with them yet?
We have not met with them.
No.
We haven't, but it's been delineated by LEC, and yeah, I know, right? It hasn't been determined yet, right? No, I mean we don't anticipate having to change the plan. At least we hope not. If that's the case, then obviously we'd have to come back here.
The other thing is I thought we talked about getting an easement on Union for a bike path, utilities, something to the town, walkway, something. I didn't notice that any place.
Yeah, I think we had talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think at both, an easement maybe on Union Street for sidewalks, perhaps, and then the bike path easement, or I should say pedestrian easement through the roadway, even though it's one way. That's something we certainly are anticipating being a condition of the decision.
Okay.
It's sort of, I mean, it's a group, it's allowing, it's not a public road, but it is an easement allowing passage.
Okay.
And also, the key would be that in an emergency situation, the town could reverse it if need be. So we'll have to talk about that language, but that's still part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You all set?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
No, go ahead, Carl. I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Bodett, just curious, the activity on that area on the sidewalk on Union Street is not super crowded generally. It's pretty much a thoroughfare road. Has there been any thoughts about a sidewalk on this road, Mariner Way, as far as connecting folks on Union Street from the land bank property on the other side of Goose Pond, maybe for more water access or harborfront creek access, or is it sort of not really?
The proposed roadway, the new roadway? There hasn't. I mean, I think based on the discussions we had with all of you a couple of months ago, it was sort of going to be delineated, maybe signed, but nothing, in other words, nothing separate from the roadway, not a separate sidewalk. Because we're asking for because I think the board wanted a one-way road without a cul-de-sac. We reduced the size of the road, the width, sorry.
And we're talking a 16-foot traveled way with a 20-foot total shoulder.
Correct.
And the layout is 20, like we did with that one on the clip, right? That's good, because if people are gonna walk in the road, like, I mean, it's safe, one way, slow, kind of without any fanfare attracting the world to get down there. I could hear this same thing we have with the Bluff Path, all of a sudden everybody's walking down there and away.
And
this is good.
we are trying to pull as far away from the wetlands as possible. That's why, I think adding a sidewalk might push us closer is something we're trying to avoid over there.
Yeah. No, this is good.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
And we also discussed no direct vehicular access onto Union. That's still,
Meaning no driveways?
yes.
Correct.
All driveways will be off Mariner
The interior, okay.
And I just wanted to agree with Mr. Markinger. I think that the improvements that you do at Union Street will be critical toward dealing with pedestrian and bike traffic, and I think the easement running through the property, I remember we had discussed that beforehand, and I still think that's a critical thing that we need to still maintain.
Absolutely. We expected that.
Yeah. And I do like Andrew's idea as well, too, about being able to reverse that roadway in case of emergencies.
That's true. Construction.
Because right now, if they are trying to pull boats out during a hurricane, they need as much access as possible to be able to get back to safe refuge there.
You mean on a temporary basis?
Exactly. Yeah,
Like if
absolutely.
Like with digging across the street, something, water main or something happens. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But, yeah, definitely, too, because I know when they're trying to haul boats out, it's all hands on deck. And right now, Washington Street and, thank God some of the improvements are going to happen there, too. But the navigability of that area is really somewhat difficult. So that would be a big asset to the town again, I think.
Mr. Chairman?
And I do think staff can work in conjunction with you to make that kind of tighten up a little bit in terms of how that would be invoked. Yeah, please.
Is there going to be no parking on Mariner Way?
There is no parking planned on Mariner Way.
Thank you.
Was there anything else from the board or staff? Leslie?
Mr. Chairman, we are still waiting on a report from Ed Pesci,
Okay.
so we should probably continue this.
Yep, no problem. All right, hearing nothing else, this is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, so if anyone would like to comment on this, I'd please ask you to do so at this time. Not seeing anything, I think it would be continued.
January 12th.
That's
Does that
great.
work?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
In
Really
fact.
appreciate it. Next thing before us is 7771, which is the White Elephant LLC on 50 Eastern Street. For the applicant. Busy night, Mr. Bobette. Go, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Once again, Rick Bodette for the applicant. I'm here with Jamie Anderson from R.J. O'Connell. You might remember this, or a variation of this plan that we submitted in April, just before town meeting. This, as opposed to the plan you just reviewed, is actually, purpose of which is a freeze plan. We followed up that preliminary plan because the zoning was changing in the area. I know it probably looks a little strange to see 10 lots on the White Elephant site. Again, the purpose is just to freeze the applicant's rights. I'm not anticipating any plans to actually put this in place, but we need to go through the process nonetheless. So I'll have Jamie go through the plan briefly, and of course, we're available for any questions.
Great. Please.
Okay, I try to keep this brief again. Good evening, Jamie Anderson for the record here for the applicant, White Elephant LLC, to present a definitive subdivision plan for the 1.4-acre White Elephant Hotel parcel located at 15 Easton Street to the north, Wall Street to the west, and then Nantucket Harbor down here to the south. The property was recently rezoned, however, due to the ongoing preliminary and definitive subdivision process, it remains zoned residential commercial, 5,000 minimum square foot lot size. I just want to say first and foremost, this, as Rick had mentioned, this plan is and has been submitted to protect the applicant's property rights in accordance with the Mass subdivision laws. The plan has been revised from the preliminary subdivision plans presented in April and now includes a 30-foot dead-end proposed way. The dead end will terminate in a hammerhead-style turnaround, as shown on the plan there. The proposal is to subdivide into 10 proposed buildable residential lots, 4 with access off of Easton Street. These 4 here will be off of Easton. 4 with access off Wall Street, those 4 on that side, and then these 2 in the back will have access off of the proposed way. The proposed way will be paved with Belgian block curbing, similar to the last submission. Belgian block aprons at each new driveway. Again, the proposed house lots have not, building locations have not been finalized. As you can see on this plan, we do have the required deciduous trees lining the street. In this case, we do have 12. Existing Chapter 91 property, which is located in front, to the rear of the hotel here, that will remain in its current state. Naturalized grasses, again, with access down a sidewalk here to the bulkhead, to the various docks and to the Nantucket Harbor. That will be maintained by an association. I'll just flip the plan around. Excuse me. A simple demolition and erosion control plan. Obviously, the hotel would have to come down if we were to do the 10 lots here. We're showing that the standard erosion controls with the construction fence, silt fence, straw wattles throughout the entire site around the perimeter. Now we do have the construction tracking pad. And again, this shows the limit of demolition for the hotel itself. I'll just go through some of the required waivers that we're similar to the last one. We're going to show a bicycle path and street lights. Sidewalk we only have on one side of the street. Pretty much that's it as far as waivers. Just flip it to the grading and drainage plan. This plan shows detailed grading for the actual road itself. The proposed paved way will gradually slope from the south end all the way up to an existing drainage located in Easton Street. Grades will continue to gradually slope from north to south towards the harbor on the proposed lots. To improve the water quality, runoff from the proposed subdivision. Runoff from the proposed roadway will direct towards a contact CDS water quality unit for treatment prior to discharge to the municipal system. We are changing the use from a hotel, obviously, to residential subdivision, which results in a significant change in ground cover. We are reducing the peak flow runoff for overall on the site based on the fact that We're reducing impervious area throughout. As far as utilities, again, similar to the last plan, 4 lots, the 4 lots here, 1, 2, 3, 4, will be served from water and sewer that we will be bringing in to the proposed way, and the remaining 6 lots will either get their utilities from Easton Street or Wall Street, for which there is also already sewer and water provided. That's pretty much all for this one, if you have any questions.
Sure. Linda, go ahead.
I'm not in favor of this at all. The normal pattern of development on Easton Street is nothing like this. We don't have any paved roads that run to the water's edge. We don't have street lights that run down any of the paper roads or any of the little ways that we have coming down Eastern or Halbert Avenue. This is completely alien to anything that has ever been built down on Easton or Halbert Avenue. It's a departure. We did the Brant Point area plan. This contemplated at some point that the subdivision may happen to the White Elephant, but this is not a subdivision that is normal anywhere on Brant Point. This isn't approval required. Where I'm having the problem is this road. Absolutely, in my opinion, I'm never going to vote for a road there, running to the water. That happens in Hyannis. That is not normal here. What should happen is Lot 8 should run to the bulkhead. Lot 7 should run to the bulkhead, which gets rid of Lot 10. There should be no road. And Lot 5 or 6 or however many there runs to the bulkhead. Or Lot 4 and 3 get a little bit longer, so one runs down here. But this is not, these 2 lots that are on the water that are requiring frontage for you to run a hammerhead down to the water, which is alien to the entire pattern of development down there, is not something I'm ever going to go down that road, literally or figuratively. So this is not something I'm in favor of at all. I understand we need to preserve the freeze. I understand we need to have a subdivision. And having 4 lots front on Walsh, well, it's Harbor View, Wall Street, Harbor View, not alien because you have little houses all through there. And having long lots that run with all of them having their own frontage on Easton Street is how every one of those lots on Easton Street is patterned all the way down to Brant Point and all the way down Halbert Avenue. They run from the road to the water. They don't have Lot 6 and Lot 10 sitting behind smaller lots running off of Easton's to the point of where you have to put a road in, paved with lights, down to the water. So that's where I'm coming from right now. I don't mind the subdivision. I don't mind having what would probably amount to 9 lots, I guess, or, yeah, 9 lots.
So you mean it's going to look like an A&R?
Whatever. An A&R is fine with me, but I'm frankly not going here to get 2 more lots on the water side, which is a completely alien development for Brant Point, period.
Because there aren't any big lots in Brant Point like this.
I don't care. Oh, yes, there were. But I don't mind having an A&R. An A&R is an A&R. They all have frontage. They all go to the water. Not a problem. I don't have much to say about that. I have an awful lot to say about that with 2 lots bifurcated at the back. In order to get frontage, you're running a road right to the water, right to the bulkhead, paved with street lights. Hardly. This would be a completely different subdivision for Brant Point. An A&R I'm fine with.
That's not going to be an A&R.
Well, I'm not going here. There you go.
Andrew's got to give us an estimate.
Can I just clarify again? As they stated at the beginning of this, the purpose of this plan is to create a freeze provision.
Right.
A freeze provision cannot be secured through an A&R.
Right.
Okay?
I know that.
Now, if this approval is granted by the board in a definitive subdivision, they can come back with an A&R at that point. They can redivide. Correct. So the plan has to show a new road, essentially.
Well, in order to go AR and get a freeze.
And
I got that.
Is that what the electric company did?
Can we let Mr. Vorse finish, please? Thank you.
I would like to say that there are other roads. I mean, we're working right now on the Brant Point, taking away other roads that were laid out to the water. So
not paved.
There is a pattern of roads that go to the water. I mean, in those cases, there isn't lots fronting off of them. But here, there is an issue of how do we access the Chapter 91 land? And that's what has been achieved with this plan, is that there is an access. Now, if that particular
Right with the bulkhead.
development or the sort of development standards for that road need to be altered, that's fine. But I think the board does need to realize that a road has to be part of it.
Yeah. The question, well, it does look like an A&R plan already. That was sort of my question, is why have 11 lots? Because it looks, I mean, I don't know if you went to court, one could say, well, you can get 7 or 8 A&Rs, so they ought not to be part of the approval required. I mean, if it was me, I would go 2 lots that both front on the cul-de-sac for your zoning freeze.
Right, and, you know, the preliminary plan, I think, was maybe 3 or 4 lots.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, I think, just so that the board can at least visualize what may be possible there. I mean, we couldn't, as Andrew said, do an A&R, we would have done it, and it would have been over in April. So, you know, yeah, we could do that. Doesn't change, you know, doesn't change the issue Linda has with having a roadway.
No,
I understand.
No, I understand that.
And then we could A&R off that if it's approved, I mean.
Yeah.
It's just, you know,
Yeah, I mean, that's enough said about that. But the other thing I noticed, I know it's a freeze plan, but when, Pesci hasn't looked at these plans yet, right?
I don't think so, no.
I mean,
We need that.
it was sort of, I looked them over quickly. It looks like they were sort of gotten in quickly. There's some sort of obvious kind of details that might need to be tidied up before you have him take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a freeze plan, but we don't, you know,
Yep.
expect to avoid Mr. Pesci's review or anything like that. I mean, we expect
Yeah.
his comments,
Okay.
of course.
Okay.
Board members, anything else? Hang on for a minute, Linda. Let me just see if this, check in with everyone else, so they at least have their first round. Matt?
No,
I see.
this is the stuff that gets crazy, you know, like the electric company thing. If Andrew says they can come back with an A&R after this, they can't get their freeze, is it 7 years, Andrew?
8.
8. They can't get their freeze with an A&R, and this is how they do it. So, no, this isn't the definitive plan that's gonna happen if it ever happened. There'd be a lot more detail. Correct?
Right.
You'd have
And
a lot more say in an A&R if there was really a definitive plan was ever presented as far as if it ever actually happened, tearing down the white elephant.
Well,
Yeah, hang on for a
I'm
second.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen anyway, but this is the process that we have to go through.
Did you have anything?
Yeah, my point is that the detail of the plans and everything that needs to be done has to be as though it wasn't a freeze plan.
I agree. And I think, you know, just to be clear, you know, the discussion should be had now, I guess, you know, because once it's done, it's done. I mean, yeah. No, I agree.
Hold on.
I would fall off my chair if they told me the white elephant was going to come down. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to happen, right? But I agree. I mean, you know, it has to be done right.
Yeah. Linda, did you have something else? I'm sorry.
I just want you to be forewarned. I said, if we have to vote on this to get a freeze plan, because there has to be a road included to be an AR plan, because you can't get the freeze with an A&R. If you come back with this plan as a legit plan, I'm not changing my tune. So if you come back with an A&R, don't have anything to say. But this is, unless you vote me out of here, this is not on my watch.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, Linda. I mean, I think the fact is we could come back with, you know, the plan that we started with, which I think, frankly, is probably not a plan the board would want to, they would be less inclined to approve. It requires 0 waivers. And we'd really be within our rights to have that plan. I mean, I think, everybody's right. The fact is, if this happened, there might be a different plan. There might be an A&R, that would make a lot more sense. It'd be a heck of a lot cheaper for the applicant to do the A&R once they get the freeze plan, of course. But, it's like Andrew said, Linda, we have to have a road, and frankly, we come back with a road that's, doesn't require waivers that might be more offensive to you, unfortunately. I mean, this is kind of our best indication of what, what might be approvable and what might be realistic.
Go ahead. Carl?
Galen Avenue is a dead-end road, a shell road off of Wall Street. I don't have any experience on the Brant Point area plan. The road that runs behind the White Elephant dorms is a small swing. The road that runs across from the White Elephant entryway is loops around on Holbert Avenue. I forget the name of that road. So there's Willard. Off of North Beach Street, there is a development to the right heading out, the horseshoe there. No, the one that's shelled or graveled by the tennis courts. That went in a long time ago. So I can wrap up my little spiel here and say I don't have a problem with this road at all, because there's lots of different roads in the Brant Point area. And Galen Avenue I'm familiar with the most, but it is a shell. It's not a hammerhead, but it's a shell dead-end road. Perhaps the big objection is being close to the harbor, but it's...
On paper goes further.
Yeah, well... Right. So, me personally, I don't think I'm going to be able to vote on this, but I don't have a problem with it. It's property. It's private property.
So, Mr. Bodett, since we're running the exercise at the moment, yeah, and I also have the ability to comment too, Linda, just like you have for a few times. So give me a few seconds here, please. That was really not nice. So, just a few things. Would you offer any kind of decrement in terms of second dwellings on this thing?
In terms of restricting?
Yeah.
It's not a discussion I've had with the applicant, but certainly can.
Because, I mean, it doesn't fail me that by right, you've got about 8 lots that could A&R off of this altogether, okay? So I think that if, just for the fun, if we're going to run this exercise, let's make the exercise run itself. I'd like to know about what type of restrictions you'd offer on second dwellings. I think the other thing that you need to look at is that you need to have common driveways for lots 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Yeah, those are the Wall Street ones. Because I'd really like to see you restrict, for those 2 extra things you're going to pick up, there's a few things I think we'd need. So common driveways for 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 8 and 9. Your internal everything that you've got on that roadway would have to come in internal, so that's 5 and 6 as well.
Right.
I wouldn't want to see them facing out onto Easton Street. Yeah, 5, 6, 7, and 10 would all be internal roadway. Yeah, access only.
Yep.
But it doesn't fail me that we've still got to deal with and have Mr. Pesci comment on this. So that puts us another meeting out, and it just, like I said, if we're gonna, if Linda's worst fear is going to come true, that you could come marching in here should the board approve it at this point, let's not do it just for the sake of doing it. Let's kind of do it with a little bit of consciousness behind it. So that would be just some of the things I'd like to bring up. But like I said, too, it doesn't fail me. If you weren't here today, 8 lots could just go right into place without us even batting an eye. And then I'm sure staff has looked at little things like sidewalk improvements, easements, and those kind of things. And I do think for the sake of the exercise, we need to engage into that process as well, too. So let me go to staff for a minute, and I'll come back to you.
Mr. Chairman, the one thing that, and you experienced this with the Frost property on Nantucket Road, if you,
Right.
The applicant can sort of agree to anything here, and the property is frozen, and then the subdivision can be changed.
Correct.
So the representation here tonight has been that this is for residential purposes, but a whole host of commercial uses would be frozen as well. So I guess, part of my question, I guess, and it's something we could think about between now and the next meeting, is are there restrictions that you'd be willing to put on that would survive, a freeze provision? And that would be separate, enforceable restrictions. It's a little more complicated because I think our general demeanor with these is going from commercial to residential. If that's what people want to do, we'll change the zoning from commercial to residential. In this case, it went from commercial to commercial. So the district that it's in, commercial neighborhood, allows a host of, commercial uses consistent with the White Elephant now and with commercial neighborhood uses that would be acceptable in Brant Point.
I think, well,
But-
let's him finish, please.
But I guess the point is there's other commercial uses that would be frozen, and there would be dimensional things that would be frozen. So I think it's a little bit different. Obviously, we would have different standards for the roads if we were talking commercial uses on the lots. So it's something I think we just have to give a little bit of thought to here, and talk with the applicant and see if there's some restrictions that they would agree to that wouldn't just vanish as part of this freeze provision.
Correct. 'Cause
So-
I remember some of the things we ran across with Frost subdivision. So again, like I said, for the sake of the exercise, let's get it right.
Yeah, no, I think, and I can have that discussion with the applicant, and maybe some variation of what's available in CN, and, I can find out what, if anything, they want in the RC, besides,
I think
hotel.
staff will have some thoughts for you as well, too.
Well, here's my problem on that. If the White Elephant were going away, and this was going to get subdivided, I think it's horrible. It's a residential use now. It's transient residential facility. That's why it's called that. It's residential in character. It does have a restaurant, ancillary to it. But if this all went to whatever number of lots, I think you're going to have trouble with the Brant Point area group. Because if it were to disappear, it needs to go to all residential. The fact that the CN is going to force commercial on 11 lots is not in keeping with what the plan wants, what the people wanted, what anybody wants down there. It would have to go to residential. Unfortunately, if it's CN as opposed to ROH or R10 or whatever, R10, whatever, R5, actually, it would have to be, a commercial had to be the primary use on all of these lots. That is a disaster in that zone. That is not what anybody wanted. That's not what we discussed.
Well, we could it's a big enough lot, we could subdivide under CN, too.
But no, what I'm saying is the primary use under CN of all these lots has to be commercial. The residential is ancillary. We had this discussion earlier today. It's ancillary to the commercial. We'd have 11 or 10 or whatever commercial lots. That is not acceptable. So as part and parcel of this whole thing, we would have to rezone it to whatever the other zone is that we've got going down there, which I think is R5. Isn't it where we went? R5? It would have to go to R5, and commercial is off the table, because I see a whole host of problems. So I think there's a lot of problems. But my other question for you is, that road is probably the worst road you could have proposed. If we don't want, here's a question for you, because you're not getting at this meeting anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Here's a question for you. If you were coming back and we don't want driveways, because that's really narrow. Wall Street is really narrow. It's hard to even drive down it when there are cars parked next to it, and let alone 500 boat trailers trying to get down it. Wouldn't it make more sense to move that road out of there, run these lots all the way through, move that road so all you have to do is have a road somewhere. move that road behind lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, so their driveways all come off that road into the back of the on those 4 lots, and then you run 6 and 5 off of that and get it out of where it is right now. That way you have everybody, all the driveways coming off a Shell Street or something, which is very much like Mackey Way, which is just across the street from it. So they'd have front, both of these, all these lots would front right here, which means that lot 5 and 6 would actually move over into where you have lot 11 right now, and all the driveways come off of there. That makes sense because there's quite a lot of those. What you've done here is probably the worst I've seen. Okay?
Thanks.
So that might alleviate the driveway problem, that might make it a little bit more palatable, and everybody comes off that little shell thing, not paved, not lit up, shell. That would make sense down there.
Well, we can explore that.
But I
and,
think
you know,
that,
likewise with the uses, I mean, you know, it might very well be that they don't want any commercial, if they're going to go one way other than a hotel, they might want no commercial use.
well, you're forced into it by CN, that's the problem. If it's under the freeze, it's different.
Well, that's
Your
the
RC.
point of what we're doing.
Right.
Eventually, everything, you're coming back with a final plan somewhere. So,
Okay. Anything else on our end?
Oh, well, you still have to go to conservation. You're in a floodplain. You've got wetlands across the street, right?
Yep.
Do you have to address your Chapter 91? Does it have to get
They
looked
have
at
to.
because it's a use change, or
I don't
is
know.
that going to kick in?
I don't know.
And the other thing is, if this did happen, I would like to see the public get access down to the walkway.
Chapter 90 is required, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
there
the
you go.
point of
Chapter
Chapter
91.
91 not changing.
Right.
Anyone else? No? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing at this point, so thank you for raising your hand. I'll ask you to come up to one of the 2 microphones, identify yourself for the record, and where you live, so if you're in the butter, we know that too. Good evening. How are
Hi,
you?
Nancy Forster. I'm a resident of Brant Point. I was on the Brant Point Area Plan Work Group. I live at 1 Swain Street, which is sort of a block from the White Elephant. We, meaning the Brant Point neighbors and abutters, just became aware of this plan within the last 10 days. And unfortunately, my husband and I are still in Nantucket, but most of the Brant Point is empty, so you get me tonight. But I think most of the points that I wanted to bring up have been covered. We want to make sure in Brant Point, I'm also in the Brant Point Association, the Neighborhood Association, so I'm representing their interests as well. We just want to make sure that we have an opportunity and a time to have a voice in this, because clearly this plan, as much as we love the White Elephant, they've been great neighbors, this plan is a totally other ballgame, which we would not be happy about at all. When we sat down with in the work group, my understanding of where we came out in terms of the zoning recommendations was that it would be, other than the commercial areas, the interior Brant Point would be R5 instead of R1, which was basically 5,000 square feet lots. The perimeter, all the property bordering on Hulbert and Easton were to be zoned R10, which is 10,000 square feet, which is a considerably larger plot. So it seems to me that if anything does happen at the White Elephant property, that is something that we should look at. I mean, it's right along the water there. I think that too should be R10. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but in any event, we just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to weigh in on this and have a voice in whatever plan it should eventuate.
So just respectfully, something I'm going to say back to you.
Sure.
This will probably not be floating out there for a long period of time. So I respectfully say to you, it is now, here and today, that you should be getting in touch with your peers, the people in the area, to, one, work with the developer who's there and give them feedback. Any type of communication you're going to have you may want to consider bringing before the planning board, either in the way of emails or letters as well, too, so that can be shared. So I just want to say time isn't necessarily on your side to get to the summer, because, again, given some of the representations they've made tonight about this, I don't see this staying open for months on end. I see this having a very definitive timescale to close as well, too.
So you're telling me that the plan that, once you see something that you like as a plan, that's fixed, so that in the event that the White Elephant does decide to sell the property or develop the property?
No, I think what I'm saying to you at this point is that with any subdivision plan that goes out there, yes, we expect public input, but there comes a point, too, where we can't just keep it open for public input whenever.
Right.
There's got to be something, as you've heard us discuss certain things we need to look at, okay? Your comments and stuff become potentially other things that we should be looking at, but if it's the same reiterative process that we keep seeing, there comes a point where we as a board are also we have to make a decision. One way or another, we have to make a decision. So that's what I'm saying to you. It can't be an infinitely long decision. It's got to have a beginning and an end to it. So this is the time to do it now, not when everyone comes back, because it won't. I will guarantee that cannot stay open that long.
No, we'll be
the applicant has a time frame as well too. You keep hearing us asking for extensions tonight.
Right.
The applicant said, "I'm not going to give you any more extensions. You need to make a decision." And we have to make a decision that is going to be fair, equitable, and well-grounded. Okay. So that's where you hear some of these discussions tonight. So again, I would really strongly encourage you. I know it's the holidays, but this is the time to start taking action with it, working with Mr. Bodette and his group, and like I said, making sure that we're also looped in on that as well too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Nancy, they're coming in with this plan to get a freeze to avoid the R10.
Yes.
Because they wouldn't be subject to it for 8 years.
Right.
And should they not do anything in those 8 years, Leslie, it expires, correct? And then they are subject to the R10. No, but the Brant Point has suggested that all the perimeters all the way over to there, past the White Elephant, go to R10 to avoid some of the weird subdivisions that have been going on down the street and down Halbert Avenue to keep the water-facing ones larger lots as opposed to these little 5,000 square foot things. We've had some subdivisions on Halbert Avenue that were alien to the pattern of development down there. And that we spent a lot of time talking about the perimeter lots going to R10. So it was something that we had promoted as part of the Brant Point plan. And I think we wanted to carry it down to there, but clearly we have a commercial property there.
Right,
but,
right.
You know, eventually we want to do that.
I mean, the new designation would mean it's 7,500 square feet, I think. So, I mean, even that would
be better.
Be better.
The problem is CN has a primary use of commercial and not residential, which is why changing it to R5 or R10 at some point, and if it expires, they're going to be subject to it, and they're not going to have any residential. But if they freeze the plan between now and the 8 years, it's RC, they can go to residential. Once it goes to, once they're subject to CN, if we don't change it before then they're subject to CN, and it has to be commercial as a primary use. So we've got time to work it out, is what we're saying. But Barry wants comments from the Brant Point people by email to the office or something along those lines between now and January 10th, 12th.
Right.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Board members, is there anything else that you have, staff? Okay.
I'll make a motion to hold to January 12th.
Motion is to continue to January 12th. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, people. for showing
Thank you
up.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burdette. Thank you. All right. Did you guys deal with this other business stuff? Okay. So that brings us to ZBA cases. Is there anything that the board feels that we need to comment on in this series? Go ahead.
Andrew, were you going to suggest that we comment on Nantucket Island Resorts? I think we already, we did that, right?
Yeah,
That they needed to apply for the special permit, which they've done.
They've done, and the matter has been continued. They're getting together some documentation for their application, and the ZBA is granting continuances.
Do we want to make a favorable recommendation on Kalpazinoff, only because all those guys were in the RC, was it, before we changed them? And most of those guys have a 5-foot setback up there, and he's sort of the last one. And he's asking for a 10 to 5 reduction, and it would be consistent with all the other pattern of development out there to go to 5 feet? Because we changed the zoning.
Personally, I don't know that that rises to a level of planning board concern.
Okay.
But if you all want to do that, we can draft something.
That's just where I want to go, because there are very few out there that have any more where to go, and most of them are at 5 feet. And he's like the last one.
We ran into that problem down there. Everybody built it RC2.
Yeah.
Like it was R1.
And he had always had a plan to go to put an addition on it, and now all of a sudden it changed, and he got stuck with this 10 to 5 thing. I'd like to make a positive recommendation on that, given the pattern of development and the fact that we changed the zoning. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think a positive recommendation because it's contemplated in the R10 district, but, I mean, I don't,
However you want to
we
do it.
changed zoning for a good and valid reason. I mean, it's not.
Oh, to get rid of the commercial, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that, the R10 district contemplates, it allows the ZBA to change the zoning from
10 to
5
5.
feet, and I think, I would think that we could certainly support that without trying to say,
Okay.
well, we did something not good by changing zoning, I think.
Well, I think we did a good thing changing zoning. I just want to support that. So that's my motion, to support it.
Okay, do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you.
Do we need to do anything with Fraza moving into the middle of the road?
I think as Leslie has pointed out, they granted an emergency request already anyway.
Okay.
So I think there's support for it.
Okay.
Okay, I think that was it.
That pretty much covers our ZBA case.
You want to do anything with Lothians?
sorry.
No, the one that we thought the planning board should consider.
Yep.
And this was on your agenda for a different reason for tonight, and it will be on your agenda in January, is case number 6714.
Figured.
It's for Nantucket Properties LLC and Tradewind Cottages Condominium. The issue here is that there are two lots with a total of 8 dwelling units.
Oh.
Basically at the corner of Nobodere and Square Rigger.
This is Rothke's, this was Rothke's,
It's not Rothke.
the other one.
Savory
Yep,
did this.
multifamily thing.
It was a multifamily overlay district special permit. The multifamily district has been removed from the bylaw. I believe we did that maybe at the 2010 or 11 town meeting. And the restrictions that are currently in place via the special permit are, there's a bedroom restriction, 2 bedrooms per dwelling unit. And there's a restriction that limits occupancy to either peak seasonal employee, which is sometime in May through sometime in October, or year-round occupancy. The owners of the condominiums, collectively as the association, now want to have the restrictions lifted relative to the year-round occupancy and the peak seasonal employee occupancy.
But not the change in bedrooms.
They have
don't-
not
they don't have
asked
enough
for the change in
parking now.
So I did a rough calculation of how many of these units exist on the island, and there's over 100, there's well over 100, I believe. And so the issue was, the planning board was the original special permit granting authority for these units. Now they're pre-existing non-conforming. So any changes have to go to the Board of Appeals. But the planning board holds restrictions separate from the conditions in the special permit that are also tied to these conditions.
Yep.
So as people want to modify these restrictions, they have to go two paths. They have to go to the ZBA as a pre-existing non-conforming use to have a new special permit issued. And then they have to come back to the planning board and ask to have those restrictions released.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's something that needs to be fixed. I think it's something that the planning board should discuss, at a policy level. Is this something that you want to encourage and provide positive recommendations to the ZBA, or
I think,
not?
I think the main point that I didn't hear, sorry, was that the peak seasonal, this whole program was proposed as part of zoning.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a hard-fought change to allow 4 units on a lot. And it was to address the housing problem. It wasn't to create more seasonal rentals. It was done to create year-round housing or places for seasonal employees. So we were given a waiver from the density standards in order to address this housing problem.
Correct.
So, a lot of these units have been used in violation of zoning. Now, maybe it was an innocent mistake or whatever, but it was a use in violation of the whole reason to do it. We weren't in the business of trying to create additional seasonal market rate rentals. We were trying to get to the housing problem. And,
Correct.
Well, I think that at a policy level, you should think about should there be some fines that go with that? Should there be some payout to release this restriction?
Correct.
Or do you not want to release the restriction at all? Because you want to maintain the units?
Take it on a case-by-case basis, yeah.
My other
Well-
question would be, since we're doing, you haven't finalized this yet, I don't think it should be going to both boards. They should be only coming to the planning board who did it in the first place. I don't think the ZBA should be inserting themselves into this one at all, because they know nothing about this from the very beginning. I think there should be a warrant article in here that if this kind of stuff is going to be coming up, and probably is going to be coming up after whatever we do with this one, that it should go into a warrant article that anything to do with a multifamily pre-existing non-conforming comes to the planning board, period. That alleviates the going ping-ponging between the two boards, and then we can make the decision, not the ZBA. Is that something we can add to our list?
Well,
This is something we weren't anticipating.
let's do this, because we're going to talk about the bike path. Not the bike path, but the whole concept of dwellings and bike path at our next meeting. That's a policy level decision you're going to deal with. So why don't we put this in as well too? Staff can certainly offer some comments in the process as well to look at it, because I think both Leslie and Andrew raised some valid points here for us to deal with. And unfortunately, sometimes we forget about the history behind why we do certain things, so I appreciate you bringing that up, Andrew. I wouldn't advocate for a snap decision tonight. I would ask you to just kind of step back from this a little bit, gather whatever facts we can get through the staff, and then start to look at this through a slightly different set of eyes at our next meeting. But hang on, I understand, Scott. There's something we can deal with now if you so desire, but the bigger picture, as Leslie has said, she's right, there's going to be more of these coming up. So I think here again, you can if you're so inclined, is to act on this one right now, or you don't have to. Then they're going to have to come back before us anyways.
Right.
And we can deal with it at that juncture, which means at the same time, you're also going to be dealing with the policy that'll go behind it. And to me, that seems a little bit more prudent, is just to let this kind of just run its path right now, and see if we can come to some decisions about how this board wants to deal with it. That would be my advice to this board. Yes, ma'am.
What about, providing just sort of a notice to the ZBA that, the planning board's discussing this at a policy level because it does require action from both boards, and that you would request that they postpone a decision until you've had an opportunity to have the discussion and weigh in.
That's a capital idea. And I hear a second to that. Yeah. Discussion on the issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, Leslie. It's a really good thought. We'll cross over into that in the next month or so. Was there anything else on the ZBA, or are we pretty much wrapping that up?
No.
Was there any public comment floating out there? I see a few people in the audience still. Otherwise, oh, you did? Okay, that's all right. Just want to check in and make sure everyone's good out there, that I'm not missing them. We had 4 other points of other business that you guys want to talk about, which is the preliminary warrant articles.
That's in there for you to review.
Yeah.
I think we probably will need to schedule a special meeting sometime in, we had talked about January 5th as a possible date.
All right.
It's right after vacation. There were only, I think, 5 citizen petitions submitted.
Yes, I saw that.
So we could go ahead and schedule those for our regular January 12th meeting and go from there on picking another date after the warrant's adopted.
Right, but we need some special time with
Yes,
you
we
all
do.
to discuss, to sit and talk about some policy level initiatives in some of the zoning bylaws that we are proposing. So,
We can talk about this, because maybe instead of dealing with the policy level stuff on the 12th meeting, maybe we could deal with some of the citizens warrant articles
On the
and
5th.
and address that at the 5th, or somewhere into that range.
do we have enough time to advertise for citizen?
Yes, I believe that we have enough time.
Okay, all right.
All right, so I want to leave that window open for you a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
At this point, the Nantucket Historical Commission, we don't really have any, basically, the state has issued, the DOT has issued
Right.
a finding of no adverse impacts based on the changes that were done, and they are forwarding that to Mass Historical. So I don't really think there's anything per se to do on this. We're waiting for a final, review and sign off from the state. So-
Right, so I think it's time just to drop that off the agenda. Wait, there's been a little bit too much time that I think has elapsed under the bridge on that one. But, Andrew, just quickly though, or Leslie, they did also express, did I see that letter in there? They're expressing the thought about putting a board member on as an ex officio status. Is that still alive and viable, or is that kind of?
There's like 4 people ex officio.
This was a little complicated, it took a little figuring
I know.
out here. The original article that was submitted called for a bunch of ex officios that would serve on the Historical Commission. What was eventually voted was simply to adopt the state law, which has none of that.
Correct.
So what was adopted, the state law doesn't have a provision for any of that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's,
That letter's moot then, essentially.
I think so.
All right. That's, we're not going, I'm just
Right.
addressing the letter that was before, so again, that's closed.
There was some confusion about that. so,
Okay.
Yep.
4181X, the Commons Lane, you need us to reaffirm the vote on that?
And, Mr. Chairman, that is a 4181I.
Oh, sorry, yes. Yeah, that's right, I'm sorry.
So that is that was already voted by the board, but I do need you to reaffirm that since it went on to the agenda with less than 48 hours.
It's duly noted that this is one of those things, again, with the 48-hour principle that came into place. The motion was made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And just FYI, there's a letter from the Nasha Owners Association in your packet. And we'll just, yes, sir? Oh, I'm sorry. Having missed the first part of the meeting. Thank you for bringing that up. I didn't know that.
What's that?
You did get 2 sets. You're right. It's, I do see that it's listed on the agenda here. That's a good point.
August 11th, 2014, September 8th, 2014, October 16th, 2014, November 10th.
Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Any other business before the board? That sounds incredibly reasonable. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Catherine, go shut it off.
That can go back to her. Thanks.
Where's your blue thing?
What?
Your blue phone. Let me have your blue thing. She reuses them.
He's going to hang on to his.
She reuses them.
She'll reuse it, yeah.
That's where they are.